So, I'll need to order, we need to approve our minutes from last time. So do I have a motion to approve last meeting's minutes?
For our last meeting.
Do you have them on the screen?
I'm a big fan of not approving things until like everything.
I think they sent it to us on email. I don't know.
Oh, okay, yeah. I knew that one would work. What I was thinking. Did I think it was something on? I just didn't read them. Anybody else want to see them? Oh, they're on the screen now. There you go now.
Yeah, and just for everybody's reference, everybody's reference, these notes were minutes were emailed October 20. So it's been almost a month.
People might have been wrapping gifts or something.
Yeah, yeah.
Every year I was coaching on this till next year.
I mean, so far, so good. We can keep scrolling down, as far as I'm concerned. Certainly, if anybody would prefer to wait, we can do that.
Well, we need a motion, want to this motion in a second.
Oh, it's gonna move by itself.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. But you were controlling it.
Oh,
No, it's all me.
At the end of it,
There's another page. Yeah, there's 4 pages on at that bottom.
keep going. I mean, I don't know, just everybody say when they're finished. I'll say. Good, put your thumbs up, I guess, for your finished reading, so we can keep it moving. Thumbs now.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're good now. You're good. Okay.
Are good?
Would anyone like to make a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second,
Second.
all in favor? Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Approve those, and if there are any corrections, we can always come back with an amendment, if need be. Take your time and read it thoroughly.
So, yeah, that's all. So So for tonight, the big topic is the agricultural and economic aspects of Region 8. So we'll be we'll have a couple different presenters, give a couple good slides, really throw some interesting data points about Region 8 for you guys to look at, question, and then discuss among yourself what we've been doing these past couple of meetings. One thing I wanted to really hammer on is, I know a few of you have asked about potential strategies and recommendations, how are those being created? Will you guys have homework doing this? No, that can be staff. We're listening to you these meetings, we're listening to what you're saying, what you're agreeing with, what you're potentially disagreeing with, and creating recommendations on for what we're hearing from you. When we create these recommendations, we're going to present these back to you as well as the public for your input as well as their input to make sure we heard you correctly. And then when we send these back to you, you're going to say that's exactly what I was saying, or that's completely off base, or someone fully up to you. But don't think you have to go home and do this work every night. That's on staff. That's what we get paid to do. And you guys are here, we're asking a lot of you as it is, no need to make you write hundreds and hundreds of different things, right? So I just want to make that clear moving forward. So back to tonight, the main purpose of tonight is to add on to these strategies we're working with. We want to hear from you regarding agricultural aspects, economic aspects, anything else that may arise. We're always listening to what you guys are talking about, and as we know, planning and everything in the region is connected. So tonight we may be focusing on the economy, but you never know when we talk about housing or a little bit of transportation, things that may come later, but you never know what pops up tonight. So feel free to have these fluid conversations. Don't limit yourself, but try to stay on topic with the economy and agriculture. One other thing I wanted to mention while we get too far, a Region 9 plan will be introduced at the County Council very soon, we hope. And when it is, I want to pass that to you guys for you to look at. You can see what the work is for Region 9, aka your next door neighbor. There'll be hopefully a lot of similarities between that plan and what the Region 8 plan will look like. That way you can have a really good idea of what to hopefully expect from the work you're putting in these next couple of months. And that way too, you can understand if there's ideas in that plan that you want to see incorporated into your plan, or if there's something in that plan that you think is more relevant for you in your neck of the woods, we can bring that up here and make sure we really hit that home in the Region 8. So with that being said, I'll pass it to Jesse, and we can kind of just keep moving tonight.
So this is just the graphic we've shown you guys at the beginning of each meeting we've had so far. Just once again, it kind of overviews the process just so you can get familiar with it. We are in this middle phase here with the plan development from fall 2024 to summer 2025. We are drafting goals and strategies up, and that's what staff is doing on the back end of y'all's conversations. So like these meetings are really a workshop for you guys to discuss and come up with your take on the challenges and assets of your community, and to kind of formulate ideas that you think could be helpful for the future of your community. And staff is on the back end, like Eric said, formulating some of those recommendations based upon your conversations. So that is where we're at. Tonight's conversation will really be focused on agriculture and the economy. You guys live down here, so I don't need to tell you that agriculture is a big part of the economy down here. So some of the things that we've heard from the public so far are to support local farms. They're a large part of the identity of South County, that people appreciate the open rural landscape of South County, and they appreciate small local businesses. Folks largely accept that traveling for groceries and large purchases is part of rural lifestyle, but there's interest in more access to fresh foods locally. Specifically, when we talk about folks that may only have one car per family, or other things that like they really enjoy living here in the rural aspect, but it can be difficult for some economic purposes, to get to the grocery store, to get to your job, living in a rural place. And so with that, we're gonna start the agricultural conversation.
Let's introduce, Phil Garrett,
Kelly.
who's the manager for the Arundel Ag Program from Arundel Economic Development Corporation. We also have Julie House next to her, who heads up the South County Chamber of Commerce. And we also are joined by Christina Pompa tonight, who is our Deputy Planning and Zoning Officer, and she also heads up our agricultural programs underneath also planning and zoning as well. And I'll note before we get into this conversation that, as we talked about before, we've been talking as well with the Agricultural Commission. So the county has an appointed standing board representing the agricultural community that meets on a regular basis. And Jamie sits on that, so does Emily. And so we met with them back in November to kind of hear some of their ideas, what they see as challenges and opportunities. So what you'll see in these slides reflects the conversation that we had there too. So kind of bring that perspective both from kind of what we've heard from public comments so far, as well as some folks who are leading that industry in South County. I'd like to ask Shelley to kind of just give us a quick kind of overview as we start this conversation of kind of like the status and trends in the agricultural economy in the county. Slide.
So I'm Shelley Garrett, Ag Business Development Director for Arundel Economic Development Corporation. And for Arundel County Agriculture, the majority of the bulk products that are produced are your small grains, your corn and soybeans, your wheat, barley, corn and soybeans taking up the vast majority of that, as well as there are some cattle, pigs, chickens, livestock that's produced, and as you can probably tell driving down the road, a vast majority also is equine farms as well. Based off of the USDA census that was just previously released last year, they total us at 454 farms total in Kansas, taking up 36,000 acres roughly, with a median farm size of 25 acres now, which, as you can see, number of farms is up from 2002, but the average farm size has decreased. Another thing to keep in mind, though, for our USDA census is it is farmer voluntary reported. I don't feel personally within my position that it's a great representation of agriculture in our county. I find it much more robust than that at this point. I can speak from the equine side of it that there's over 4,600 horses that are accounted for just Anne Arundel County in itself, with 950 stable licenses out from Maryland Department of Agriculture. So we've already surpassed that number of farms that's within our USDA horses. So the majority of where we're selling our products, the granary, as we know, has not been in operation for the past year. The county had procured that, and unfortunately, it did not last past the first operator. Currently, we're looking at options of what can go at that property. Hopefully, somebody could step in. We've had a couple of farmers that have tried to kind of round up to do so, but it has fallen through. So if anybody knows somebody that wants to hedge out grain and wants to add that to their resume, we would love to get to talk to you. Or some other ideas for a use of the property, but otherwise in sale right now. There, but that's pretty much the synopsis, summary of Anne Arundel County agriculture, as well as you have your local watermen as well. But I'll let Julia be able to probably speak to that a little bit more.
And Shelley, the use for that property would still be an ag potentially.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And if it did go to sale as of right now, it would have to still have a requirement of being operated as a granary for a certain amount of years, once it was no longer financially feasible.
So as we think about how we sustain agriculture in the county, there's kind of four big topic areas of issue that seem being brought up in the Agricultural Commission, as we're having like the Region 9 plans, we're talking about agricultural community and closer to the coast as well. And those relate to preservation of agricultural land, the public health aspects of growing food locally, the economics of agriculture. Of course, we want to be able to sustain this industry, it needs to be profitable, to help support farmers to be profitable in the farms. And then very relevant to these plans are the land use aspects of it. How we try to maintain the rural landscape that support the critical mass that you need of agricultural land to be viable. So we're going to kind of focus our conversation tonight kind of around these four topics. So the county does operate an agricultural and woodland plant preservation program. It started in 1990s, and it's housed in Office of Planning and Zoning. It's Christina mentioned before that she's the head of that program. And a couple of the major tenets of this are that we do try to focus on staying like a critical mass. Like, we know how you have large farms. And then we have mentioned a couple of times, you got to move the farm vehicles around. There's a lot of infrastructure that needs to happen to make these farms viable. So it's kind of a central tenet of agricultural land preservation, making sure that you're kind of conserving large areas. So to help support that, the county and state programs are pushing the same direction as well. They designated two areas of the county, we call them priority preservation area and the rural legacy area. Those are both named for two state programs, when we get them up at the county level. Basically, we draw lines around the county, encircling those large remaining agricultural areas to have be that critical core to focus on for the land preservation efforts. And those colored polygons you see, the kind of yellows and pinks and blues there, indicate farms that have been conserved. And the main vehicle we do that with is through agricultural preservation easements. So what happens there is that the property stays in private ownership, stays active in agriculture, and you effectively buy the development rights, right? Property is a bundle of rights, they have rights to minerals, rights to air. We, through these agricultural preservation easements, basically buy off the rights to build more houses on the property. And there is, I should say too, there's an advisory board that Emily sits on that kind of helps give outside advice to the agricultural preservation program in the county. And I think we're over 14,000 acres of land in the county now that's been preserved through the different agricultural programs. And there's four major tools that we use within the agricultural preservation program. The top one is the Maryland Agricultural Land Preservation Foundation, and the acronym is MALP. Again, state funded program. The county applies to it when we have farmers that want to get into it, help them get into the process, and state funds that purpose of the conservation. Some of the notes on that, Maryland Department of Agriculture is the lead on that. For eligibility, those properties do need to be over 50 acres in size, and programs are kind of focused on that big critical area. And of course, with farming preservation, you want to focus a lot on the soils. So there are also specific criteria about making sure that it's viable farmland and protecting the best, most productive farmland programs. One of the challenges there as a state process is a long process. These are kind of year-long efforts to try to get properties queued up, go through the state evaluation, and come back and be able to settle on and get that. The valuation of these things gets complicated as well, right? How do you value just the purchasing of a certain portion of development rights for a property? These programs all have their different criteria and how that is evaluated. In the MOUNT program, typically you do a fair market valuation, and then it can offer up to about 75% of the value. The state also operates a program called Rural Legacy. This is more broadly focused on kind of rural landscapes, so it kind of brings an ecological perspective as well as agricultural. And that's why we have designated rural legacy area. Again, I encourage counties to identify those areas where we do have rural landscape, we have large natural areas and agricultural areas, and focus land conservation efforts there. These easements can be more restrictive for the farmer. They want to see stream buffers and forest conservation plans, other kind of ecologically based measures for the farms. And then the county has our own program that we're funding through the general fund. We have similar eligibility criteria, focusing on making sure that it's high quality farm, high quality soils, and with 50+ acre criteria for that as well. These acreage criteria can be flexible in terms of if it's an adjacent farm. If you're next to one, you're less than 50 acres, that's to be included, but just like rural funds generally. Interestingly, in the program requirements for the county, we have criteria set up. We pay about 60% of fair market value. So farmers know these programs, and well, I get a better deal from the state than I do from the county. So what often happens, as a farmer comes in and wants to do is they'll kind of shop around and see what program is going to be able to give them the best value for their land, and depending on their other considerations like time, since the county we control our own process, we can expedite it more quickly than the state programs. We also have a program called the agricultural district. This doesn't actually purchase the development rights, but gives a lasting tax benefit to the property owner. And we make them take a 10-year commitment to get this program. That's separate from the state also has a program with the investment taxation, where if you're producing farm, you can go in and get a lower agricultural value, say a resident. So these programs, as I said, were established, in the 90s. Things have evolved since then. the programs have not evolved much. So, as we've gone through as we walk through with this program over the years, we've seen, in our kind of a decrease of farmers enrolling into these programs. And there's been a lot of ideas that have suggested how to improve them. So next slide. Some of these that do come up are eligibility criteria. You mentioned the 50-acre threshold for most of these, and then so the same, the average farm is below it. So how do we kind of meet those in the middle? And again, our rules are codified, so it's going to take them either changes in county code or through our program guidelines to be able to allow that. Easements. One thing we've talked a lot about, and we mentioned it in a little bit on farms, we've talked about it a bit already in this group, is the practice of agriculture is evolving, right? 50 years ago, there was a lot of tobacco farms back. Do that anymore. We're seeing rise of agritourism, farm stays, other activities happening on farms. Now, the easements that were executed, 20, 30 years ago may not have envisioned those kind of uses on farms. And so we're finding farmers becoming constrained and saying, well, I can't do value-added products, do things that are not considered mainstream agriculture because it wasn't allowed in the easement last 30 years. So trying to figure out how to be more flexible in terms of easements. And of course, the price. Making sure that it's going to be economically viable to help support the farmer, sustaining the farm, is core to anyone wanting to do these programs. The boundary lines themselves, I think they get talked about, saying should it be expanded, are there areas to be considered, are there areas that should be kind of refined? We can look at this more when we kind of look at our zoning and land use maps. We'll show you that where these heritage preservation areas and rural legacy areas are in more detail and pull those maps out too. In general, if they were mapped years ago, looking at things like soil, where the large farms are, there's also some funny things like Wasted Corner is included in that, and that's commercially zoned commercial property, agricultural property. So there might be something that we might want to think about recommending that they define. Equity has been a question that's been brought up. Again, some of the newer farmers coming into the county are getting into smaller farms, are coming from different cultural backgrounds, language has been an issue, access has been an issue, and African Americans are underrepresented largely in these programs as well. So thinking about how these programs could be more effectively engaging on minority communities. And then some questions about kind of how the county interprets its tax rates on agricultural land. And I'd like to ask Emily or Anna kind of chime in any commentary on these. You've been involved in a lot of conversations around these programs over the years. You've both been personally engaged in them.
Yeah, there's a couple things on here I see that I'm very glad to see. I mean, I think an easy thing to do with rural legacy is, and I think you're all doing it, going to expand the boundaries so that more farms can be eligible for that program. And that can go hand in hand with engaging minority farmers as well. Potentially, the favorable tax rate has just been mind-boggling to me. I don't understand, and I really would like, and I'm working through the Ag Preservation Board too, and maybe through the Ag Commission as well, sort of as a unified front. Certain ag preservation programs have favorable property tax rates for farms and preservation, but rural legacy, for example, does not. And it doesn't seem, it's not fair, first of all, but I just don't see why that's not the case. I'm not understanding why the county attorney is pushing back on that, because it seems that the enabling legislation is in statute and property tax to allow in Arundel County. It's very broadly written for any of the state's ag preservation programs, so that could move forward. One of the other things a couple things I've been thinking about in terms of these kinds of opportunities, again, on the tax policy side, and these are probably more state types of issues, but there is an ag transfer tax. It's like meant to be a deterrent from changing property from ag use to some other use. Perhaps that's something to, consider. Is that rate appropriate anymore? And another thing that I've been thinking about too is a lot of us that have farms or larger properties, or businesses on our properties, we don't utilize a lot of the waste, or a lot of the services actually from the county. We're sort of like mini cities. We do our own water, we do our own sewer, and we do our own trash, for example. But yet we are still assessed at the same rate, as if we're utilizing those services. So something like that might be a consideration, especially if the tax assessments are going up like they're saying they are, you know? I mean,
My problem, by the way.
yeah,
All states are wrestling with.
so thank you.
Question, something you mentioned about, we do our own sewers, we do our own water. I don't have a farm on 3 acres, but yeah, we have a well and our own, we're not on a sewer system. Are we taxed at a lower rate? or
I-
something like that?
I gave that more as an example,
Yeah.
generally, like how we are responsible for, yeah.
I think it's the whole region. I mean,
Like region eight,
It's even-
very like
I
that.
live in a
Yeah.
neighborhood and we have a pump, well, and
Those of us who have the water, so we get a utility bill.
Yeah.
We're ratepayers, and that's self-sustained system. They're
Supposed to be.
by county code that they're required that, their budget comes from from the ratepayers. Yes, on the water sewer.
Good to know.
But I'm paying the same fees on my property tax for solid waste services.
Yeah.
But yet I'm not utilizing. it.
That's just like trash pickup, you mean?
Yeah, trash and recycling.
I guess, could you use it? Like if you,
I could, but we have, I don't know, 4 houses on the farm and 5 barns and we would block our driveway every time if we were able to bring,
What about recycling? Do you use recycling?
no. Mm-mm.
Cheap. Okay. So what do you do with your plastics?
It goes in the trash and frankly, a lot of the pickup along the street goes in the trash as well. It's being real.
Any thoughts or questions you want to bring up around ag preservation?
No, these are topics. I mean, I think a lot of this is in the Region 9 plan that's moving forward. It's essentially on our list. We have things that were identified in the updates to green infrastructure master plan. I have been seriously working on ag preservation since about August. I'm still really digging into the program. And I am working with the Office of Law right now to expand what we can do to make some revisions. And I'm afraid that it might be more complicated than I originally thought, but we will overall over time.
Do we have an ag preservation chair or head of that group at this point for Arundel?
No, the position has been advertised, it's open until January 13th. And I've been going through the list, looking at the qualified candidates, and then I'll be interviewing absolutely as fast as possible. I can assure you of that.
Okay, cool. So we went down that list. I know in the ag commission meetings, we've definitely talked about pretty much everything there.
Yeah.
And the smaller farms, I think based on what Shelley showed, is probably a good place to start. And I know that's hard because if you have a smaller farm, you can't actually put an additional home on it.
Yeah.
Other than the fact that the county recently passed that law for the additional dwelling unit. So I don't know if that would be something that they would be willing to give up. The easements allow more flexibility in uses. The state really has been more proactive, I think, than the county on that. But I think the county in the last 5 years has kind of stepped up a little bit more, not necessarily, I don't know about writing into the easements, but just in allowing for those uses as these new agricultural ventures, kind of arise, trying to work with the farmers. I see, a little bit more on that side of it. And Shelley's intimately aware of that. I would imagine you get all the calls, right? Like we used to. Yeah. So that would be things like the wineries, the breweries, value added, farm stores, things like that. Yeah. Distilleries, all of those. And what? Distilleries as well. Distilleries, yeah. So I think, we're trying. I think that there are some hiccups there within the county itself, just not just, preservation, but I think that's something that's an ongoing process. So as far as price paid, of course, that's going to help a lot. The boundaries. So on that one, with the announcement last time of the federal Puxent, or whatever they call that thing, that new federal refuge.
Yeah, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is kind of designated Southern Maryland refuge.
So there's a lot of land in that, in our region that falls in that. So I'm not sure what the implications are of that designation or if there will be funding. But to me, that could be considered an overlay for preservation. And if there is additional money there to encourage landowners in that particular region, that, you know, whether it's a state or a county program, that particular federal operation, entity, opportunity could layer in and provide some more value for encouraging the preservation.
Yeah, this is something we're looking at as a county, basically what the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is kind of studied their ecological data and have identified this large area in which they'd like to see more habitat preserved. And there's a promise that there'll be more federal commitment funds to preserve land there. So yeah, as that overlaps with county geography, it certainly would be an opportunity for us to try to get some federal funds to support land conservation, especially since county has made such a big investment over the years. Like the Green Whale, Hudson River aligns with that really well.
Yeah.
Other areas like along Jug Bay and up next to the Tucson Wildlife Refuge and get further north.
It seems like with the hiring of the new person, that could be, if we can hit on that a little bit early, because I know Calvert is in that region. Are there other counties in the region? Charles, St. Mary.
Yeah, there's a lot of areas.
And maybe Smaddox is already thinking, I don't know if they're already on that or not, Shelley, do you know? I haven't heard anyone. Yeah. And then. And I definitely know, from the commission, we had a member on the commission who was African American and trying to really work with the county on doing some farming on a property that is not in a rural area. I think there's some challenges there, like big challenges. So I would imagine that expanding those boundaries, like Emily said, would be very beneficial in that area. It's actually tough.
No, I just had a question. You mentioned the ADU law. How do you think that would be in conflict with the?
Not in conflict. So in other words, if that could bring more value, because so it's 1 for 20, one house for 20 acres, right? And so if you only have 25 acres, you can only put one house there anyway. So your land is not valuable for the easement program. They're not going to pay you to not develop because you can't anyway. So if you could put an ADU, how it's called?
Yeah.
An ADU on it, and there is value in that, then would that help them generate more value for the easement? If it's 20, if it's less than 50 acres.
But with the ADU program, that house is always part of the main
No,
property.
it's not always, well, it's on the property, but not the house.
It
right?
can't be sold separate.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
But there's value in that, because
Yeah.
if you have an ADU on your property, so I'm trying to build the case for it's worth more for the farmer, right?
Right. Because you
Okay.
could rent it out or family members.
That's right.
No, I agree. The smaller farms would be better. I have neighbors who have a 26 acre. And they are selling, they're moving, they would want it, they want it to be preserved, and they don't know.
Right.
Sure. And on the, the program's basically, it's a 50-acre threshold. And the only way you can go below 50 is if you're adjacent to another farm and preservation. One of the problems I see is I don't know how we can dip below 40 acres, because you have to have development rights in order to have an easement by development rights. So if that is also going to be challenging for us, I understand that farms are getting smaller, but unless we change that residential, or the rural agricultural zoning district, which I don't think you all want that either. I don't know how we get below 40 acres for a farm to be able to buy an easement, because like a 26-acre farm doesn't actually have a development right. On 26 acres in the RA zoning district, you're permitted one house. If you are in ag production, you may be able to have, farm employee dwelling unit on it, but you don't have the ability to subdivide the 26 acres.
Right, so it may be time for a new program for preservation. If this is truly what's important to us, what's holding us back from creating a new program that doesn't depend on development. Like you're buying the right to not farm, or I don't know, but the ADU is the one thing that we do have the right to do at this point. So if a person's willing to sign off that they're not going to put an ADU on, if that's a value, because it does require more services. I don't know, maybe you're getting more tax money than it's worth as a county, the county, I don't know, with that ADU.
That's a fascinating point you raised that I hadn't thought about before, but it's also tied to, you know, the whole appraisal industry, the highest and best use is development value. Well, I mean, is it, you know what I mean? So, I mean, the rural legacy program uses an easement valuation system, which puts values on, yeah, more natural features and agricultural features and things like that. So, yeah, I mean, if you have a program that doesn't have to be based on,
Development.
yeah, development, and it's being the highest and best use.
And but doesn't it vary? Because I knew my neighbors with the 26 acres said that they can put 4 houses. Somebody can buy and put 4 houses.
Well, we
don't know.
They're
Yeah.
probably zoned RLD.
Okay, it's a horse farm right now.
It would depend on the zone.
Yeah, depends on the zoning.
Okay,
How do the family conveyance costs fit into all this? And
There's a big rewrite was done in the code in 2005.
Okay. got it.
In this context.
An easement is,
My house, where we're living property for years,
Yeah.
there's a strip along the road.
yeah, yeah.
This is something that-
An agricultural preservation easement is where, you give up your development rights to property, so property is a bundle of rights. And just like your right of way easement, you're giving, you can access, for example, your utility line come through, that's a bundle of it's one of those property rights you have in a bundle. Another one is development of houses, and that's what gets bought in these agricultural preservation easements. So the property, every other right remains in private ownership, but just that development gets bought off, so they can no longer build additional houses on.
The easement dictates the restriction.
Yeah, and it's perpetual.
I mean, how creative can you be to get around something like that? And, you know, I mean, there are, you know, you view it as it's written and you say, well, maybe they didn't take something into account, or maybe
Yeah.
this doesn't follow the spirit, or, yeah.
And I think, you know, this is a really good issue to bring up, and kind of think about how to fit into our plan recommendation, you know, say, hey, county, they can evaluate ways to be able to provide, you know, purchase value that isn't necessarily based on a housing unit. And that be something we study and look at. We're not gonna solve it in, you know, next week.
That's a big long-term goal.
I like the idea of the rural legacy and the use
Yeah.
of the land. I think that there may be some possibilities there for a slight adjustment or maybe a new program.
We had some public comments come up too during the 2024 countywide general plan, that someone gave us thought about saying, hey, the county should set up some kind of ecosystem service program where you are compensating owners for those public values that are being provided by a land staying in natural state. And that's kind of in line with the same thing that rural legacy does.
Yeah, that's great.
Always surprised, having been working and planning for 30 years, there's still days that I learned something really new, and I'm like, wow. So we recently had a rural legacy easement holder who sold their rights in 2023 come back to us. And in rural legacy, we use an evaluation system that's specifically designed for rural legacy. It's not based on appraisal that's done by a certified appraiser. So basically, that valuation system can end up with a value that's lower than an appraisal would be on a farm. And if that is the case, the property owner actually can take a federal tax credit because they have made a non-cash shareable contribution. Just signed off on paperwork today for that property owner, but honestly, I didn't know we had that. I feel that that's a marketing piece, but that makes rural legacy a lot more effective. If the valuation system did value it lower, and they could end up with a tax credit. So just making sure that we know absolutely all the benefits of our own program, so we can market it is super important.
Something to consider for that too, with the 20 acres and the easement rights. What about somebody that wants to buy a piece of property, never wants to build a house on? But they want more agricultural land.
you have your grain farmers who would probably buy into that program that have no intention of building a house.
Oh, yeah.
There are, on the private, nonprofit side, there are also land trusts that would do this conservation easement, and they could write the terms of that potentially to allow agricultural uses and be able to, they're not, again, dealing with the state rules. That be negotiated agreement, again, you can, a lot of those often work on the tax benefit, to the estate to a wealthy landowner. So, yeah, I think that's also an opportunity, I think, for Evolution's program is that there are things happening yet from the state agencies, federal agencies, and nonprofits, to make sure that as we're approaching landowners, that we're kind of aware of the menu of options of what they can do, so we understand kind of what their goals are, and help them best fit. Here are the programs that can help, them achieve their goals and make it financially viable.
Sounds like a person can need assistance.
It's key staff people dedicated to it. I mean, there are a lot of aspects to it, and to really be successful, yeah, we can have a small army of people.
Thinking about other programs to help support farmers, I want to have Shelley transition a little bit off preservation about the economics of farming. Kind of talk about some of the programs that Arundel Ag offers to help support farmers. We can talk about some of the economic challenges of farmers face.
Yeah, absolutely. Some of the programs, a lot of you guys that aren't in farming have utilized in the past, whatnot. New to when I came on, we used to have mini grants that were up to $1,000 worth of cost share to applicants, and recently we upped it to $10,000 grants for farmers that they could apply for. The first year we put out $38,000 worth of grants on farm projects that was in partnership with Morbidco that added into our grant fund and increased the amount we could give out. Initially it was only 20,000. And then this year, it's looking like we're slated to give out about $50,000 worth of grants on some farms this year.
Let me do a quick acronym note too. We mentioned our Bidco and we mentioned SMATIC before. There's a couple of regional agricultural economic development organizations. Our Bidco is in Maryland, so it's looking at the MAR, and then SMATIC is Southern Maryland, the SANR. But they both kind of develop corporations that help support farmers through programs like this, to fund and finance support.
You said you're up to $50,000, so that's 5 farms? Or,
No, so it
okay,
would be up
yeah.
to, so it would be just depending on what each, not all, everybody's applying for 10,000.
Okay.
So my pool is 50,000 in there, so it just depends on how it takes to get that effort.
Oh, okay, 50,000 is your max?
Yeah.
So
Okay.
you could have $51,000 ones or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
Have any water gonna partners? We did. Yeah. So that program is still underway with reviews, where again, we partner with Morbidco, so we're waiting to hear back, so they're gonna be able to partner on which projects with, see how much more money we can get out there. That's the Agriculture Business Improvement Grant. And then we also have the agriculture equipment rental program, so farmers can come and they can rent by the day or a certain amount of time on the schedule to be able to rent like those pole diggers, foot pounders, manure spreaders. There's a drill for soybeans and small grains. There's a turbo till, a lot of different types of heavy pieces of equipment that would otherwise run them tens of thousands of dollars, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars, to be able to acquire on their own. They pay a day rate. They go call Tom Collinson, who's just down the road, who's a handyman and able to work on the equipment, and then they report back how many days they use it or how many acres that they farmed with it. And then so that's a county provided funds, also in partnership, some of them with SMATIC and Wells, that's that Southern Maryland Agricultural Development.
Who owns the equipment? Maryland only, Anne Arundel County owns the equipment?
Anne Arundel Economic Development Corporation actually owns it.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're a nonprofit for the county.
Okay.
And then we have our ag scrap tire program. So for farmers, you cannot just drop off a tractor tire at the dump, like you would normally do for your vehicle tires. And they charge for that for a very large amount. So we partnered with the Maryland Department of Environment to be able to provide a trailer that farmers would then take all of their ag scrap tires that they find either in the ditches or off their equipment. And they load it into that trailer. It's free of charge to them. And then we operate off of grants to be able to pay for the disposal of those tires. So that, I think, out of the past couple of years, they've had saved over $40,000 to farmers for just the donations of the tonnage. We also do an Arundel Grown Dinner, which is we reach out to local farmers and producers to be able to donate food into a dinner that then invites the community to come and enjoy it, so they can get, you know, hands-on experience of being face-to-face with those farmers, also where they can buy locally to try and increase that marketing.
I would endorse that, that's a great one, that's a fun event.
Yeah, this last past year, we had it at Homestead Gardens, which was fantastic. It was a little hot, but not as hot as the week before, which was fantastic. But really gives you a good taste of what's available in our area, and everything that was produced there. The bulk of it, at least, was from actual Anne Arundel County, not from, you know, just anywhere else in the state. We do farmers market promotions, so that would be like the Anne Arundel County Farmers Market up on River Road, there. There's several, we have 10 in the county as of now, we're hoping to add another one, hopefully here soon. I'm trying to steal the giant parking lot in Edgewater, see if we can add another location to that. And we kind of just give a little bit of support to those farmers markets. They all operate on their own boards and whatnot to be able to do that. They don't really have to need a whole lot from us, but we do push out the promotions so the public can know the hours of operation, days, and what kind of produce they can potentially find there. We also do a Arundel ad guide, and this year we just went digital on that, so you can go into our website, click into that flip book, and it will give you a whole list of anyone that voluntarily signed up to be in the guide. And what products they sell, where they're located, and we're hoping to try and build off of that even more, where you can have an interactive map. You just click on it and it'll show, you know, hey, I'm down in Deal area, what's close to me here, instead of having to search for the full guide, or I'm down in Waze's Corner, what's the closest, you know, fresh produce to me that was grown here. On there. So a couple other things that we do also, as I've mentioned, with the granary, we work with Thematic a lot to try and provide some other grants to local farmers. We also have the Volt loan in our office that can go towards farmers where they need to buy equipment or infrastructure. You need to build a barn. A lot of them don't know that yet. That's the next promotion to push out to, that you can go through the Volt loan, which is funded by the casinos. A certain amount of money goes into that Volt loan, and then it has to go to small businesses, certain industries, and we're going to start tagging onto that for ag as well. But kind of a office that tries to provide loans, grants, and support for people trying to navigate through the county and make their businesses profitable in ag.
So some things that come up around kind of challenges and opportunities around economics of agriculture that's come up through discussions like with the Ag Commission and with AEDC staff is one is, Shelley mentioned earlier about the US Census data for ag, not great. So like, just make sure we got a better understanding of what our production base is, who's out there, who's operating. To find some funding to do some more detailed local research, to make sure they've got more accurate information. And then there's a handful of issues that really get interwoven around farming, especially the one interesting thing from the Census of Agriculture is that creeping age as it's all getting older, including our farmers. So it's quite often that we have farmers who are 7 years old plus operating their farms, and the kids might have moved on to something else. So that generational transfer of land, especially with the increasing value of land and trying to maintain a large piece of land, make it viable for farming, that becomes a huge challenge. And again, that's a national issue, not just local to our county, but certainly something we need to try to work on. And make sure that we're supporting the diversification of activities on farms. As Anna has mentioned, farm safe, value added, different ways that we can help make sure we're increasing the value driven out of farms. Workforce development education. We've got some great 4-H programs and Southern High School, their ag education program. Let's make sure that we continue to work on expanding that and offer more kids opportunities and see more career pathways in the agricultural industry, and more mentorship and on-the-job training opportunities. Marketing, thinking about those farmers markets and other ways to try to get locally produced food in front of consumers more equally, and help support the growing agritourism in the county. These issues all kind of get interwoven, and we've talked about with the Agricultural Commission potentially having a strategic plan for supporting these efforts. So we've talked with different agencies, federal, state, regional, and local ag, make sure that we kind of get a unified playbook that identifies what are the key issues, what are we going to be doing in the short, mid, long term to help try to support and sustain agriculture in the county. Wrapped up that too is the infrastructure needed. The grain silo is a great example of that. Like there are certain pieces of kind of economic infrastructure that are needed to support different agricultural products, and when you start losing the farms and the production to be able to support them, it's hard to sustain that. Folks who are in the livestock industry and, deal with having to raise proper vets, let alone like, slaughterhouses and be able to process meat. So being able to think regionally about how we can have, some food centers where we can bring some of those, services together for consolidating food for distribution, cold storage, processing, commercial kitchen type space. It's been an idea that a lot of communities have been implementing to help support their local agricultural communities, and it's been kind of in discussion on some of the ones in rural ones. And some kind of food hub. And then, think about that generational transfer of farming. How do you help get those new farmers started up? It's a very capital intensive and debt intensive industry. As we mentioned, there are some regional and state programs with SMATIC and Marbitco that have funding for startup farming. So it may not necessarily need to be something that the county starts new programs, but maybe the county helps augment funds to make sure there's enough resources for young farmers, new farmers, in the county. So it's kind of some ideas and get more comment on either from your perspective. Another first important perspective, we're talking about food. So public health becomes a big issue here. Access to locally produced foods. These postcards were from outreach that we did this summer in Lyons and Boone's Bar, mobile home parks. And it was amazing how often they would write down their cards that simply said, as a quick way to get people's thoughts, what would make a better community to you? And often they would write, often in Spanish, that would mean access to more fresh fruits and vegetables. So especially for our low income families. And if you're tracking what's happening in elementary schools and Lothian and Tracy, there's a population of kids who are on free and reduced meals, and the population of kids who are lower income has been rising dramatically in the last decade. So how we help try to increase that access and help kind of mutually support, right, the farmers' viability, that can sell things locally, hopefully at a good cost, we're getting more access to healthy foods, especially for our vulnerable populations. And why did it come up in discussion this a few times, more community garden space. Which can seem funny in a rural area, but also when you're thinking about especially mobile home communities, those folks don't have space for much of the garden. Or near our schools for educational purposes that can support things like local food banks. And that's something that we've not done a lot of that in our range. There's a couple, like the Kinder Park, notably has a big community garden that's been going on for years. There's another place up near Annapolis where some land just got donated that's going to be turned into a community garden. Some of our libraries, Crofton Library, just built a community garden next to it. So it's idea of starting to percolate up. I think there is, potentially some support. It's often very volunteer-driven activities, but where the county land base help support by making land available. It's just like libraries. So, just thoughts or comments about access to healthy foods.
Does the county, I guess, currently have any type of initiatives that would support or subsidize things like mobile farmers markets or something in the sense of a sorted box of fruits and vegetables that could be distributed to areas such as that, subsidized by the county to help the local farmers as well? Yeah, fortunately, there is a network of nonprofit organizations, including churches and like the Anne Arundel County Food Bank is a standalone nonprofit. And the county does push a lot of funding through that, as well as the Department of Health, which kind of quasi-state and county agency. So in the last year or so, the Anne Arundel County Food Bank has bought a mobile van, and a couple of these other nonprofits have now mobile food pantries that they actually do on a regular basis, kind of go into the mobile home communities and on a regular schedule, go through and do that. The interesting thing with feeling the price of groceries, with inflation last few years, it's been harder and harder for those folks to stretch their dollars. There's a big need for more funding in that space.
What about schools? Like, do elementary schools, are there any programs that partner with local farms to use their produce?
So there is a backpack program here in South County, and we work with quite a few different farms. Like during but I think it's like April through November. We pick up once a week from different farms and create backpacks for the students so that they can take them home. And usually they get them on like Wednesday or Thursday, and then that way it lasts them through the weekend, especially since they're not provided school meals during those days. But it does provide fresh fruit and vegetables in addition to the canned goods and non-perishables. So that's another community-driven, church-related type of.
Yeah, but playing on her idea, right? If the schools have to serve food to the kids, right? Is it written that the schools have to buy their food from Anne Arundel County farms?
Or Anne Arundel County, they have to buy from Anne Arundel County vendors. They can't,
Who are
they're
getting it
not allowed
from-
to purchase
from
on
where?
their own.
Where are they getting it from?
That I don't know.
Not
But I
Anne
do know
Arundel
that
County
schools
farms.
are not allowed to purchase food on their own.
That's federal.
Well, I just thought of it,
Yeah, but
Like,
I mean, it
I
makes
gotta-
sense, right? Like, what?
like at the university, I get my
Right.
grads, and I just graduated from undergrad there in May, and I like going to the dining halls, it would be like, oh, like, why Angus beef? And like, it would be different, like their farms throughout, I mean, that's obviously the University of Maryland has a much larger footprint throughout the
Sure.
state. But just, I don't know if that's, like Fridays, we have Friday, like, from a farm, I don't know if that's also what it would take to do that in any school. What school, exactly? Oh, yeah. farm to
Exactly,
table.
like, why not? Like, because the Anne Arundel County's gotta spend the money on the food anyway. So why aren't we buying the food from Anne Arundel County?
There is some program policy around that we can dig into and get back to about it.
Yeah, and it's a federal program, the reduced price, lunch. and
Yeah, I
breakfast.
got it, but it doesn't say you have to
And so,
buy it from a
but- I
federal
mean,
vendor.
Right, but that doesn't mean you couldn't technically be more restricted with that. The other thing, community gardens associated with school. Great way to teach kids and actually get some production out of it.
Yeah, there's a lot of land at schools.
Yeah, generally. Yeah.
The next thing I want to touch on was kind of get to the land use component of these issues. I want to check for, you had a later, you need it. Okay,
6:55,
okay.
my lead time.
Can we actually hold this until after our break then, and let's maybe just kind of stay on the economic idea. Kind of want to ask Julie just kind of give her perspective from South County Chamber about economic development challenges and opportunities in South County.
So I appreciate you guys having me today. I'm Julia Howe, President and CEO of the Southern Anne Arundel Chamber. I recognize a lot of faces in the room, so thank you for having me and for adjusting your schedule to fit my time constraints. And I've heard a lot of what you've said. I've been previously a few years back on the Agriculture Commission for Anne Arundel County, so it was an honor to serve there and hear some of those issues. And then my husband is a commercial waterman and small business owner in the community. So different, but a lot of the same issues that the agriculture field and industry is facing are a lot of the same issues that commercial watermen and our aquaculturists and all of those are feeling as well. So you have a friend in me and all of the challenges and struggles there. Southern Anne Arundel and Region 8, Region 9 has a lot of agriculture and maritime business. And when I say maritime, it really opens up a door to a whole group of industries. Maritime with marinas, the repairs for all of the boats and different types of vessels, hospitality, tourism, shops, restaurants. It really keeps going. And then all of the different avenues of repairs within the boats and within different types of marine life. We have a huge amount of people that live right on the water and don't have homes. And then we have a lot of people that have multiple homes, whether it's here and in another state or in another part of the city or part of the state. But there's a lot of visiting transient people as well. So it's a lot of that. And then we have a lot of services here in the community as well. And that's, your hairstylist or your HVAC tech, your plumbers, all of that. So it really is very service-based and very industry forward with community members and not so much where Fort Meade, where we're all behind a computer and that kind of thing. It is very forward-facing in a lot of our industries here in Southern Anne Arundel. I think the whole farm to table, beta table has really taken off. And I think a lot of people are looking where their food is coming from, wondering what they're putting in their bodies. How can I get a better product, even if I have to pay a little bit more, or knowing where it came from versus just grabbing it off the shelf like we've traditionally done. Oyster restoration, aquaculture is right along with the agriculture part of it. We're taking care of our bay better than what we have in the past, and just trying to see how we can continue that growth trend, not only on our land, but also in our water as well. We do have the rural challenge of the balance between having the necessities that we need and having some healthcare options, having some grocery stores, having some of those nicety areas in our community, but then also staying rural and making sure that our traffic isn't increased more. We don't have any 4-lane highways or anything like that in the area design, like we chose to be that way. But if you're ever on Route 2 at a certain time of day, you know that the congestion has picked up and we do have quite a bit of growth and balance. Kind of needs to stay and play with that. Our small businesses here do see quite a bit of challenges with workforce. One of the biggest things is hiring within the area. Most people that live in South County work in South County or work outside of South County, but people that live outside of Southern Anne Arundel work here. Don't work here. They work where they're from. They're not going to pass a restaurant. They're not going to pass a couple of marinas to come here. They're going to go into the city rather than out of the city for the most case. And then our traditional workforce, childcare, the preschool age and the school age, and then transportation and access tends to be a workforce issue. Transportation is still a challenge in South County, even though we have endured some of those challenges and we've gotten a few things up and running. There is still a lot of challenges to get from here to Anne Arundel Community College, to sometimes take 2.5 hours on public transportation. So somebody that wants to continue their education but doesn't have the transportation, it really does create a barrier. And then the same thing, if they wanted to come here to work or they wanted to go somewhere to work, that creates another barrier. I kind of talked about the road congestion, but to bounce back to agriculture, those traditional lane roads make it hard for our agriculture equipment to get from point A to point B. Sometimes their farms aren't right next to each other. And you see it quite often, people posting on Facebook or other social media sites that they got stuck behind a tractor, they got stuck behind some type of farm equipment. And that's kind of the price that you pay to live in Southern Anne Arundel, but it's also a challenge to try and get those equipment pieces from one place to another and to continue moving traffic. We have the same problem with boats. We have a couple of boat builders, and especially one down here, that the road is going to be shut down in order to move a boat. And that's a challenge that we face with the single lane highways here. Recently, Interim Economic Development was able to put some revitalization money down in this area with very pinpointed areas. And we've been able to kind of promote that and get that going. So we're working with economic development to keep that going and to see where we can expand on those, so that if you did have a building that was older or had been sitting for a while, how can we make that more approachable? How can we get the curb appeal up? How can we get someone in that building? That type of thing. And those small pieces of grants and lower income loans are really what's helping kind of guide that and keep that going.
I'll add a little commentary on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the, another program that, another part of Arundel, Anne Arundel Economic Development Corporation, Shelley Works, does that kind of more traditional, like urban redevelopment. As Julie was saying, that we'll give loans if they've got like a old storefront, you want to be able to rehabilitate it, look nicer, renovate an old shop. But they only give those loans in designated areas. And the date of designated areas have all been in the northern part of the county, where we have our older commercial areas. And there's been some concern in the past of bringing that down to South County, saying, wait, like, we're not urban blight here, we're a different thing, but there is a need for a lot of old stores that might be family owned and have the capital to do a big renovation. And that's what actually came through this kind of discussion with the Region 9 group, was to put in the recommendation saying, yeah, we should have some designation that allows this kind of loans to be applied to Eel and Galesville, very specific areas that then helps give Anne Arundel Economic Development Corporation kind of the policy context of it, and then give those grants and loans without people getting, thinking you're trying to change things and, make the algorithm better.
So, we have a great business community down here. It's very community oriented in the area. So if anybody has any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them, but, just kind of keeping that balance of how do we continue growth and continue to keep our businesses open and prosperous, but then also maintaining the comfort, the part that we all love about Southern Anne Arundel.
Well, yeah, I wonder, in order to keep, less development insofar as the residential goes, meaning like large, higher, we call it density. I wonder if those types of programs you're talking about could also be applied to residential housing, meaning existing single family or duplexes that need attention to even be livable. That those folks that probably own the property may or may not have the means to do so. And could that be something to look at too, especially in Region 9, because of the density of the population in those communities, When you drive through and you can see this house and that house, you wonder, oh, well, I wonder what's gonna happen with that, it's gonna fall down.
Right,
You
like
know?
you see the beach house that has probably been flooded numerous times, and then you see the high rise next to it because it's a builder that, knew the area and that kind of thing, so.
Yeah.
The residential piece of that would be,
We'll focus on housing on a meeting like in a month or two from now, and, there's another nonprofit that's focused in the county called Arundel Community Development Services. They're kind of the housing development agency for Arundel. And they do have a rehab loan program for low-income households to help out. So we can share some information about it.
Because as opposed to buildings, which I think we keep talking about, but I would imagine there are probably thousands of houses in the entire county that would be potential opportunities to create that housing that we so desperately seem to need. Yet we want to turn our head on these houses that already exist and go build something else.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
As an alternative to building something new, let's fix up what we already have. Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly.
This group has also talked a bit about kind of Wilson's Corner in particular. I think if you have any kind of thoughts about that area, and we'll explore that more as we go, kind of talk about zoning and things later, but just want to see what's Julie here, kind of your thoughts on if you want to do some business down there.
primarily commercial. It has a lot of work to be done. It kind of gets forgotten as part of the county, for all different reasons. But part of it is the fact that, it is considered a low income housing area. So it tends to be a lot of warehouse, a lot of industry type business that is in Wasons. Even something as small as lighting was made huge improvements. So street lighting was put up in a building complex that had, I want to say it's seven commercial properties there, or 7 commercial tenant units. And new lighting was put up, and it made a world of a difference for their security. It increased their visibility, it increased the amount of people that were foot trafficking and trying to come in and, checking on things. And it reduced the amount of crime that was down. So something as simple as just putting up more lights or having lights maintained on a regular basis tends to be where it's at. But yeah, I think that their commercial businesses that are there are there because of where it is and because of the warehouse space. We don't really have a lot of warehouse space in Region 8 or Region 9. So I think that's kind of where it comes from is a lot of that space, but it's definitely grown. With the health community center up there now, it's offering a lot of new services to people. The food bank has gone in quite a few times. They were making monthly stops up in that area and partnering with businesses. So they were partnering with Bay Community Health, they were partnering with Shore and some of the other smaller businesses that were there. So I think that's where the key is just kind of partnering together and bringing those resources into existing places that are already seeing people. You're going in to get your check cashed at the bank. Why not pick up a bag of food at the same time?
Yeah, would that be a good place for a farmer's market? We're talking about, South County has all these local farms right there. And then you have the low income housing areas right there. It's like, would that be a great place for like a pop-up small farmer's market, especially in the summer when there's an abundance of fresh food?
In addition, you have Route 4, and
Right.
so you're drawing people from other counties
Yeah.
as well, yeah.
There's some dead space there that you could definitely just get some tables ready to roll and some of the smaller farms or bigger farms or whatever that have surplus.
Has
there a reason that has been one there?
Potential. Any further time. I don't know if there is any county property to do it. It would have to be on a business, right? Do you know offhand if there's any county property on our side?
I think there is within a wildlife resort.
Yeah, yeah, something, yeah.
Come on. Take them on a hike, get your bag at the end.
I think that might be honestly, being and having a farmer's market at our farm and knowing the clientele that purchases the local food. I would imagine that something that could be really good was what Perry was mentioning a minute ago, is if you had a service, and I don't know how much often, but if a van, let's say a van, collects the food at the end of the market, Riva Market, there's always food left over, and if that could get collected in some way, and maybe it's pennies on the dollar that the farmer gets, but helps it just not become part of the compost or 50 seconds or whatever, if they don't already eat it. A lot of farmers have gotten pretty smart about using leftovers and things. But, and then having a dedicated location such as in region 8 at Winston's Corner, where they know it's a known time and day and then people can come, and maybe there's an ideal that the costs are covered. So something that someone paid yesterday, $4 for it, it's $1 today.
Right.
Something of that nature that would make economic sense and be realistic. And, it's, local food is not cheap. And local food is not abundant, honestly. I mean, our market, we sell out. I mean, most of the farmers honestly sell out before the season. Like, we have meats, for example, meat farmers that come to our farmers market, and usually by March, even February, you can't get chicken breast anymore because everybody wants chicken breast, right? So you might get some leg quarters. You might get the stew hens, the ones that aren't producing eggs anymore become stew hens. So, but there are abundant food during certain times of year, and a lot of people aren't growing in greenhouses either. So there's limited supply in other months. I think that would be great in those types of areas, to be able to redistribute food and offer it at a reasonable or affordable price point.
And to go off of there, also, Sematic had started a program in Charles County that they have not expanded yet. They asked about it for our area. And it was where they had grant funds to be able to purchase from local farmers and then build community fridges and those, not being able to go out and venture to get the local produce or may not be able to afford it, areas. In addition to that, a lot of our farmers markets, for some of the funding for them to receive that, then you have to be able to accept, it's like SNAP benefits and those kinds of things, to be able to, have those comparable prices that, those that don't have the finances to purchase it on that as well.
It might be just good to have a resource through the EDC, Economic Development Corporation, where, like, for example, we bring leftover produce here, like right here, and they have a food opportunity for people in the community to come get food. And so maybe I know there are several in this little area right here, churches that offer that. So perhaps there could be a little bit more coordination there as well between the farmers.
Yeah, I think, 2018, I don't know, something like that. We tried to do a, restaurant, food industry and farm-based co-op, but you need a full-time manager. You know what I mean? Like, I was trying to partner people up, but it got to be overwhelming, because there is a want, and there is the farmers that have all this product, so, getting more of them in the room together, it would brainstorm a lot more ideas.
And the restaurants, that would be a great outlet too, because not only do they have leftover fresh produce, but they also have prepared food that is safe, it's never been touched, you know, especially caterers.
Yeah.
I think it's about time, you need to go on to the next stage. Maybe it would be time for us to take our break.
All right, we're gonna get back to everybody. All right, so we're gonna go back to,
We're gonna talk for a few more minutes about, different minds back to agriculture,
okay,
and we'll revisit some more specific stuff about that. So we talked about kind of those four big topic areas.
Harry.
Hello.
Excuse me.
So we talked about those four big issue areas for sustaining agriculture, thinking about preservation of ag land, about food access, food policy, the economics of agriculture, and then the land use context. How do we maintain that rural landscape? So I want to focus on that fourth one now. Think about land use. This figure is in your handout. Is the existing land use of the county. So this is a map where the color coding kind of describes different types of land use. The light green is our agricultural rural areas. Dark green are parks. So like the Smithsonian are there, the Bay and then the light yellow are residential. And you can see how development patterns. You all know from living down here, kind of along major roadways, we have these subdivisions happen. And it's really fragmented those agricultural areas. Talk about how that's the problem, kind of that critical mass one half of agricultural. It's important to note that the majority of these subdivisions were built prior to 1990. Back, you know, the RA zone that covered most of South County, the rural agricultural zone, used to be 1 house per 5 acres. In 1981, we changed it from 1 house to 1 house to 20. As we talked before, the family conveyance within the county code, that was allowed up until 2005. And so you could carve out pieces of property for children, grandchildren, et cetera. That was removed in 2005. So
Why?
It was getting abused.
Tell you, it was abused.
Oh, it's used, okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes the number before, now it's 1 for 20.
yeah,
What was it before?
it used to be 1 for 5, 1 house per 5 acres. Yeah. And that was in 1981. So that was a big watershed change for South County. That was must have been amazing. Fight in Kent County.
Okay, so that explains like a lot of the neighborhoods. I'm on a 3 acre zone, so that would have been,
Yeah.
yeah. So
And importantly, to learn about that kind of, we talk about zoning as a 1 house per X number of acres. But within the zoning, it also says you have a minimum lot size. So even now, if you have your 50-acre farm and you carve it up and say you do 2 more lots, those lots need to be 1 acre in size. They have a minimum size of 40,000 square feet. So that's typically what we see when we see large properties get subdivided now, is that they'll reserve the majority of it, maybe keep it as working land, and then there's 1 or 2 lots that become houses, so just 1 acre. People always confuse that because well, my neighbor has a 1 acre property, shouldn't we have R1, 1 house per acre zoning? It does start to look funny on the map, but that's how the math works of these kind of house per acre densities.
Is that based more on how your septic system is supposed to service that residence, or is it related to them? Mhm.
So if you're on sewer, it can be a lot smaller.
It does allow that.
Oh, yeah.
So the big concepts of, this is our existing land use, and then we just mentioned zoning. On the next slide. So the zoning, in Arundel County, we've got certain classifications. The light green here is our RA zone, so the rural agricultural zone allows one house per 20 acres, allows agricultural uses, and residential uses. This darker green is the OS, open space zone, very limited uses there. That would be kind of a conservation zone. These yellows and tans are the residential zones. They go up from, there's RLD, rural low density. There's a couple boxes that kind of this dark green, that's one house per 5 acres. The light tan is R1, one house per acre. R2 is 2 houses per acre. That's the bright yellow. You see it out there from the so. And then it goes up to R5, 5 houses per acre. There's a couple of pieces of that where the rooms, mobile home park has R5 over some of it. That's about the only place around here that has R5 zoning. The zone does go up to 10 and then 22 units per acre, but you don't see that south of the highway. So it's interesting kind of see that contrast, right? Like as you look at the map of our zoning, you can see that, well, it's supposed to be one house per 20 acres, but then you look at the reality of the system use, a lot of stuff was developed before these regulations were in place. And there's still a lot of lots that have been created previously that are undeveloped. There's still a lot of little lots that, by little, I mean, they might be an acre or 2 acres in South County. They can't be subdivided, but they are legally created lots, so someone can build a house there. There's lots of subdivisions that have been built.
That's something that I've been thinking a little bit about is, you're right. I mean, this map is extremely deceiving, I would say. Because the landscape does not look like that at all. There's a lot of things that are carved up. And I understand, you know, this probably would be a big fight too, but you know, you get a lot created in 1 year and you don't do anything with it for 20 years. I mean, should there be some consideration for some sort of a time constraint put on some of these things?
Lots of parameters that haven't been built.
Yes.
Something like that, I guess, yeah.
There has been some work we've that are been doing with Office of Law to look through and make sure that, you know, after you get your subdivision approved, there seems to be following public works agreements to say, hey, you're gonna build that road frontage approved, and you're gonna build those improvements that are gonna make that subdivision work. And if those agreements are in place, we can void out a subdivision over time. And so our office has worked with Office of Law to look through and systematically see, are there some of these things that have been sitting around that for 10+ years have been built, and hey, you haven't built the agreement, back up. But there's also lots of, you know, old lots that are created here by deed, and kind of nothing to do with it, but it's legally recorded and there it is. So that there are serious constraints that we can do, but I can dig more into that and I get back to when we come back to talk about zoning. It's more in-depth analysis that how and when those things can be handled to find out.
Yeah, because I would imagine the ones that were deeded, there'd be huge assessment issue. You know, if you tried to avoid it at some point, because at that point you're saying, okay, we're reducing the value of your lot, yet you've been paying property taxes at the full value for X number of years. That would be an issue. Yeah.
Or is it difficult for somebody, let's say, to do the opposite? If they had some lot of record and they didn't want it anymore to be a buildable lot and they wanted to
Consolidate it.
Yeah,
Process for that.
yeah, I'm a little familiar with that process, and I'll tell you, it's crazy. It shouldn't. Yes.
Yeah.
It is, yeah. But if you're doing something opposite of the subdivision, then the process should be perhaps.
Yeah, I actually looked into that because I had a vacant property next to mine that went up for sale. And I'm like, oh yeah, I can consolidate this. I could lower the taxes on that land, and you know, because it's no longer subdividing. And you're right, the process is insane.
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
why would I do this?
Well, that sounds like an potential or lost opportunity at this moment, and because here we have 2 potential people right at this table willing to do such a thing.
That seems like a recommendation to put a plan that can just review that process and
Yeah.
see how we can streamline it, make it easier for us to do that. So. Yeah, you know, while we kind of can acknowledge that the zoning map doesn't reflect what's on the ground, that zoning is one of the strongest controls we have on future development, that while it can't stop what was done in the seventies and eighties, this does dramatically limit what can be done going forward in terms of subdivision of land and health in the rural landscape. There's a couple other layers of land use policy that we have that stack up with the zoning to create our framework of road management for South County. Next slide, please. And two of them here are really closely related. This one is a road tiers map and the sewer service area. Sewer service, really simple for South County. There's rain, there's no public sewer service for all of that stuff. You see, with some of the, over on the coast, we have established some sewer because, you know, things were percolating, it's kind of public health issues, so over time, there were some, sewer kind of real in that area, Mayo. Except for the little part of South River Colony, everybody in Holden is on sewer. That by itself, our septic, that by itself sets a minimum, you have to have enough space on the line to a septic field and a reserve septic field in the future. And then that ties into these growth tiers. There was a state law passed in 2012, and the Sustainable Growth and Agricultural Preservation Act, also known as the septic bill, where they directed counties to set up these growth tiers. Basically saying we're going to align your growth policies with the sewer service areas. So if you're not going to provide public sewer, we're going to call that growth tier 4. And they put in a really restrictive requirement there that says that within that growth tier 4, no matter how big your property is, if you're going to subdivide it, you can only get a maximum of up to 5 units on that property. So it's interesting, you can have a 200-acre farm with your 1 to 20 zoning, you should be able to get more than that, but this law being in place, if you're in that growth tier 4, it says you can only have 5 units. In the growth tier 3, which is kind of the orange color, there's a bit of that on council, and down your ways, and it says that if you're going to subdivide there, more than 5 units, that you need to go in front of the planning advisory board. And in this county, our planning board doesn't review development applications. This is the one time that development projects. So that's a really strict throttle again on subdivision potential, but again, only adopted in 2012. So in this county, we have these kind of layers of protection to help maintain that rural landscape, the zoning, the growth tiers, sewer service areas being kind of predominant. And you can see how this graph shows the number of housing permits approved in this region in the last 2 years. So the number of residences built is on the left-hand column there, and then we have decades on the bottom, so 100 and going halfway through from 2020 to 2024. And what you see is a big boom in development. It starts in the 60s and in the 70s, 1,700 apartments built, in the 80s, 200, in the 90s, 1,250. And it starts to drop off, 2,000, 900, and they drop off. 2010, that's when, by then we've got, these provisions in place where the RA zoning goes to 1 to 20. We've got this growth here. We've got a recession, of course, that hits for 2000 as well. It helps knock the wind out of the real estate market. But so I would argue that this data indicates that these controls that put in place in the last 20 years are being effective, that we're not seeing the rampant subdivision development that we did decades ago. So talk about how we continue to maintain this content. There's always improvements we can make on this policy about our rural areas. One thing was mentioned that the agricultural commission is always kind of coming up with, hey, if farmers having a problem with this, can we change the code to streamline it? That's kind of like a troubleshooting role that the agricultural commission plays. They have a legislative committee, and I think they've been really effective, especially in the last few years, and there's been a series of bills passed to help support agritourism and help to make it more streamline the permitting for doing basic construction activities on farms. I think that's an important thing to continue to do. And then, yeah, as we try to maintain this rural agricultural land use pattern that maintain these policies in our growth, in our general development plan, the zoning, the road tiers, water and sewer service. And this group brought up this idea of this urban rural, boundary line.
Yeah.
And, I did some research on that, but between our last meeting. That was actually attempted in 2016, with the bill 8216. It blew up a big fight. I think at the end of the one, we were voting for it. And it was interesting to kind of dissect and dig into it. In terms of the substance of the bill, like it was trying to set that policy and say, hey, let's be very clear with folks that we want to keep, and their overall part is to keep half the county, keep 50% of the county within a rural area. For generations to come, it kind of make a clear policy signal of that. But the challenge is then how do you make that regulatory, how do you make it meaningful that it has teeth to it? And the bill had the provisions that kind of regulatory teeth were to say that there's a couple of processes of how you can change zoning in the county. One of the processes we're going through now, like there were accepted owner applications last couple months, you got to review them, we're going to go to county council, comprehensive zoning, look at the whole area. We also have an administrative hearings officer that hears zoning appeals. We call that piecemeal zoning or administrative zoning changes. And it's kind of a quasi judicial process. There's very strict case law on how they can make those changes. You can't just say, hey, I want to change my R1 zone to R10 because I want to. They have two criteria. They're simply, there has to be proof there's either a mistake in the zoning map. Like, hey, county council 5 years ago updated the zoning map, but they got my designation wrong. Like it says in the minutes of the meeting that they said it should be this, but it's that. You have to be able to document there was a mistake in the map. Or that there's been so much change in the area that it merits. About say, hey, a whole new mall or subdivision in the county, I should be able to increase my zoning. What that law was gonna state is that within the rural part of the county, that only that mistake rule would be a viable reason for a zone change, like that administrative hearings officer. The change would. Now, as I said, there's a lot of statewide case law that goes into that. I'm not even sure that would stand up. But from our county attorneys at the time, let go for it. So I guess they thought it would. So it ended up being a big storm of debate at county council that ended up failing. And from my perspective, I was looking at it 5-10 years later, it looks like it was only going to do a very little bit. Well, it's something I think we can explore further. Kind of, if you guys want to keep that as a reclamation plan, I'm not sure if I'm looking at that experience that it's the right effective tool for the county in this regard.
That mechanism doesn't make sense, really. I mean, when you think about it, the way, if that's what it was actually effectively going to do, it seems as though if we were going to take a deep dive into that whole concept, that there would be a different set of criteria, maybe conditions to be met, or something that sounds more realistic.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder what Baltimore County does, or Montgomery County has a similar law. Might be something worth diving into.
We can do some research and bring it back to you guys later.
Okay.
I think Baltimore County is 1 to 50 in there. Yeah. So I don't know if is it just strictly a zoning thing or if it's something additional.
Yeah.
One thing that came up in discussion with the Ag Commission around how we kind of do development review and notification, and had come more these group meetings too about with these large properties, with our typical notice if something your neighbor is going to subdivide their property, we require them to send a notice out 300 feet from your property boundary. Well, if you have 5 acres of land, mail to one person. So that maybe for southern part of the county, maybe we extend. And not sure what the number would be right now, but we could do some math, do some analysis, and include general maintenance plans that we can review that criteria to see that change.
Because that criteria is for both like parks and stuff too. We were talking the last time about Davidsonville Rec Center. She was like, oh, we'll send out a notice to 300. I'm like, there's no one there. Like it's county property, and then an empty lot. Okay.
That was part of the issue with the Boys and Girls Club for Southern Middle School was that there was only 4 neighbors to receive a letter.
Yeah. Is that still going on? Like,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah, they have
yeah.
time.
They were talking about it, but then
Yeah.
I haven't seen anything else.
One other note, I put it on the slide, it's kind of something discussion before, is going back to horses. And thinking about kind of the land perspective of, no public horse trails. I know there's been some tension, we had recreation parks at our last meeting, asked some questions about, right, what about, trails for horses in the public park system? But, kind of more broadly, are there ways that this plan can help recommend the framework to help try to get some more hopefully physical trail for horse riding?
We don't have a trails master plan at this time.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
We don't have a trails master plan in this county. There are other counties that have them, because the way county government works is first we plan it, and then from the plan, you start to implement. And so we don't have a vision that has been established in a master plan that says, this is what we want for trails. And trails, there's lots of different things. Equine, bicycles, motorbikes, which I'm using the wrong term, but, there are a lot of different, users that hikers, etc. But we don't have one. I mean, it's something that's in the general development plan. But again, we have like 600 different strategies in the general development plan.
Are we allowed to say we would like a trails plan for South County?
Yeah. That's why I brought it up.
I think that was something too, we kind of like, I had brought up in the beginning, was like accessibility just for walking or biking, especially in some of these roads where people like to bike, but it's just like, very dangerous. Expanding the road, even if it's not a sidewalk per se, but like having a line that has the bike with the arrow, kind of walk show, something like that somewhere.
I should have included the vacation photo. I'm gonna share a vacation story. So over the holidays, I went to Washington State where I lived for a while, and went to the public meth out event. It's this beautiful up on the east side of North Cascades, and beautiful landscape. In the 1970s, they got together with a lot of these rural landowners and got easements across their property. So there are hiking, biking, and in wintertime cross ski trails. That's what I was doing. For like 100 miles plus throughout this valley, connecting like 3 different towns up and down. And it's just an amazing community asset and recreational opportunity for bringing tourists like me and come spend money there. But in some ways, I think with a rural landscape, sometimes like a nonprofit led, hey, you get a handful of property owners to agree to allow some limited access. This was seasonal above. The running of the fields are fallow there, let people ski across them. There's places I think where sometimes the nonprofit and private sector and private landowners can maybe do some of those things where, a county coming in and saying we're going to drive a 12-foot path down your farm is going to get shotgun.
Yeah, I think it would help to have a vision, because then you're looking forward, you're saying, okay, we can eventually link this up, et cetera. If you look at the whole fiasco with the BMA and getting it into PG, finishing up with PG County just because of the one landowner, I mean, you kind of want to avoid that.
No, it's a challenge. I mean, in an ideal world, you have trails going through all these private lands, but for example, on my farm, my son works really hard to create a sustainable space, meaning that he hunts. Yeah. And so, before we had the farm, a lot of the neighbors used the farm at their pleasure to do whatever they wanted, including burning barns down. So we, by the time we purchased it and started to fix erosion and build some infrastructure insofar as shallow water, wildlife areas for the farm, you can now duck and goose hunt. And then imagine somebody walking through there, it would eliminate our ability to do that. So there are different things to consider for things like that. And I used to be an avid cyclist. I mean, to the point where I was a competitive, and I won't ride on the roads here anymore. And I don't want to, because look at the traffic. You want to put yourself out there on that road with the amount of traffic that we have. So we have to really think about what's the reality and the locations for these different things that we're talking about. I mean, even the Boys and Girls Club, that's in a location that's very challenging for hunters that have hunted here for, I'm going to call it centuries, so it's a balance, and we all have to give and take a little. And I think just realizing that there are many different perspectives is part of our job in this group here. So, not saying one way or the other at all, just saying, realizing there are many different things happening in this area.
I recently spoke with somebody who lives in Davidsonville, and every year he does the bike ride from Pittsburgh here. And I said, oh, Pittsburgh to DC, no, he said, no, I come all the way to the border of Davidsonville, and that's when I have to get my wife to pick me up, because there's no safe way for me to get to, my home.
I mean, this used to be
Wow.
the area where it's retained, but I could not recommend it today, and I'm not
Yeah.
so sure that it makes sense at this juncture, but maybe at some point, in some way that it would.
I would definitely add in like, because of in Davidson, when you go off of Route 50, there's that big park and ride. And there are a lot of people, I see at least on the weekends, who park there and they ride down Rutland Road and they ride St. George Barber Road. And there are a lot of roads. I know, like several years ago on Reba Road, somebody was hit and killed by it. There's like a ghost bike and that kind of thing, which is terrible. But I think I definitely agree seeing the perspective and the area, but I definitely think at least in, northern region 8, I guess if we divide it even more, there are a lot of people who bike. And I know out in like Crofton, almost up to 97, they put what's that trail that they put all the way up to, they just paved it. It now goes all the way up to, into Crownsville. I can't even think of what the trail's called. It's like the South Shore Trail.
Oh, yeah.
And that's to hopefully like connect into Annapolis and all these things that I know with Crofton High School, which is along Davidsville Road. They built sidewalks finally, which is crazy. I didn't have that because I had middle school. But just looking at potentials for, for people to be able to like utilize spaces more.
And that's why you need a trail plan, because all these things
Right.
kind of happen haphazardly.
Right.
And now you've got this fragmented system and it's like,
Well, in Davidsonville, there is like like an actual bike trail that's like a map that people do, and it has like areas. The weekend, and it's super dangerous because it like winds down through Harwood Road, and you're like winding up going like, I want to pass you, but I can't pass you, so I'm just gonna like do this for like 10 minutes, and like I hate summer. 'Cause I'm just like, okay. Some extra 20 minutes everywhere you're going because there's always someone on a bike. And it is an actual trail, like it has arrows all through it. From like, I think it starts at Southern and it goes all the way up to like maybe the park and ride.
Does that have like the little, it has like a little bike on it.
Scope
that-
Greenway.
Yeah.
Yeah. That
There you
one.
go. That's sort of-
So if people like biking in the area, just not even like,
just want a space.
yeah, just a little shoulder.
You're saying makes a lot of sense. It's like, does that even need to happen? But if they're gonna do that, like, what is the solution realistically? Because it was kind of like the young lady was saying earlier about how when the boat is brought through and stop traffic, like, it is dangerous. So if people are determined to do that, what is,
Yeah, but we'll scale up for our next meeting. We'll bring in the transportation folks, including the county bike pedestrian planner. There you go. Put the park up there.
something to consider about the horse trails wise, going back to the original part of the question. There were some that were planned, like Bacon Ridge and a couple of them, but the regulations that were going to be imposed, like manure bags that you were gonna have to bring, and then like, it's not very conducive to be riding horses on asphalt with shoes on, if they're barefoot, sure, but many of them have shoes. The parking area was underdeveloped compared to what needed to happen with the horse trailers in there, so having a really good plan would have been, productive for that, so I think you guys are on the right track for saying to have an implementation plan, something in there that addresses all of those needs also. I don't think any horses are packing out.
Kind of anticipate future needs, which I know I'm friends with, you might know Gail Enright. And she talks about how she used to be able to ride from her house to Doty Farm. But then the exit 60 was added. And I said, well, why at that time you guys advocate for a rider trail or sidewalk or something to continue to that? She said, we just didn't even anticipate that there'd be this much traffic. Like, who would want to come here? And, now in
424
retrospect,
used to have no traffic.
right. But yeah, that would have been a great thing to fight for at that time.
That is a very scary statement, that we didn't even anticipate that there would be this much traffic. And look at us now.
Yeah.
And, hopefully we're all looking into 50 years from now, thinking that, trying to anticipate. Yeah.
We won't have roads then.
Well, maybe.
Well, the other.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of good ideas for us to be able to kind of draft into recommendations and simmer on. Bring it back, one last touch on economics. We had a couple of statistics that put in the briefing that we shared together, bring back up, and we can have a little more focused discussion on wages too. We've talked about that a few times. Circle back to that. Julie made a comment about kind of the number of people kind of living and working in South County. It's pretty stunning from looking at the statistics that we have from census data.
So one thing I worked for the Census Bureau, I worked with the LEHD data, and I want to point out that one, this is 2021.
Yep.
Two, when you get to smaller areas, it's less reliable. But three, I think what we need to start considering, and given that it's been in 2021, is remote work.
Yeah.
I work remotely 4 days a week. But yet in LAHD data, I show up as working in PG County. So is that really realistic? And I think you would have a lot more in that middle category, live and work in the area if you took remote working.
Give all the caveats.
Every statistic has a caveat.
The economic briefing with you guys is more brief in the region because you have a small population, the data is really.
Yeah, it's left a lot.
But yeah, just to make it that, you know, yeah, based on that. We have a large majority of folks, based on that data, saying that we live here, but we're working elsewhere. You know, the big key destinations are, as you guys see, right down to DC, you see kind of the through traffic down to military bases, also notice that a small portion, basically say about 13% of people employed in the region actually live there. But yeah, again, grain of salt with that. Top job sectors that we see in the region: construction, administration, support, retail, healthcare, professional services, like Julie was saying, a lot of person-facing service oriented. I don't think that's important enough for demographics. Next slide, please.
I think there one thing about commuting, and I think one thing again about anticipating future. Right before the pandemic, the park and ride in Davidsonville was expanded.
Yeah.
There used to be full too.
And
Yeah.
People used to park down 424, like people used to park.
Yeah, road.
Pandemic happened, people realize you really can work from home, a lot of our jobs.
Yeah.
And now that's empty.
States are there to cut off the people bus line.
Yeah.
The traffic is still a nightmare.
Well, I think you also see a lot of people, because of that, shied away from mass commuting. Like they didn't want to get on the train because of COVID.
Yeah.
So now there's no need to go to the park and ride because I'm driving myself. So your traffic went up and the use of the bus lines has gone down.
I think that's the calculus on the transit too, right? If y'all are doing it once a week.
Yeah.
I'll do that, I'll pay for parking once a week, I can take that.
Yeah.
But I can save 20 minutes on both sides and.
I wonder if in our plan, we should mention, you know, possibly re-looking at, I mean, certainly you want that thing, the main parking lot, but then they did the addition. And is that an area that should be kind of, as a parking lot for like future, do something with and make it useful?
And I think about the remote work too, but I was gonna ask Julie while she was here, but maybe you guys are knowledgeable too, of the Wi-Fi, broadband access. Yeah, how challenging is that?
So I'm probably the only one in this room that can't get broadband access to my residence, and everybody's looking at me like, what?
We had to, if my husband didn't do excavation for a living, we would have had to pay Verizon $14,000.
Oh, Comcast
Yeah.
wanted 20,000.
Yeah. Ridiculous.
I said, okay, we'll work out a lease purchase agreement, and they looked at me like I got grown another head. It's like, what, you think I'm gonna pay for your infrastructure? So it's kind of a long saga. There's a challenge with that. My question would be, are any businesses in South County facing this issue? The FCC map is highly inaccurate. I've already filed 3 challenges. It takes months. The telecom companies are playing it, and now It's actually worse because, Musk got his, satellite service approved as broadband, so basically now the FCC map is completely useless.
To go to say every person broadband.
You have that.
Yeah, so it's saying, since Starlink serves everywhere except for small parts of New Mexico and West Virginia, pretty much everybody's got broadband access right now. So, but satellite is not the same as terrestrial broadband. What I will say for the county is that they came through for me at a Christmas miracle. There was a truck parked across the street a couple of weeks ago with, conduit for running fiber. I contacted the county, they're like, yeah, this is something I've been working with the county on for 2 years, and finally our road is getting it. But it was a huge battle, and just getting recognized as not having it. I suspect though that there are still parts of South County that can't get it. I think a lot of the residents who can't get it just don't know how to fight it and, you know, how to complain. I still don't have it, by the way, but right now the conduits are very under snow, so I'm not confident the fiber is gonna be put in anytime soon, but it's coming.
We have a recommendation, supportive of that.
Yeah, I mean, but the county has to know where the issues are, and that's the problem. I mean, there's grant money for it, but if you don't know where the problem is, you can't really solve it.
And your recommendation is running fiber.
Well, fiber, or, I mean, one of the things I faced, and this was with a county ordinance, which Comcast flipped in, I guess around 2004, whenever they signed the cable franchise agreement. They have some obscure thing in there that if your property, I can't remember the exact wording, but if it requires a unique engineering requirement, that they can charge extra for installation. And so, you know, I get a quote for 1,700 feet of cable, and I'm like, my house is 200 feet from the road. It's like, no, they want me to pay, run it all the way down the road. Yeah, so the county is letting Comcast get away with that. That's kind of unfortunate, but I think they do see, the county does realize that there is somewhat of an issue. I am in an ever-shrinking minority, thank God. But as long as I'm in that minority, it's a real problem. And as long as other people are in that minority, it's a real problem. And I think, you know, it is difficult. I mean, people down here realize that in most places, cell phone coverage is really poor. So what's your alternative? You know, and it really, it's been tough the last 2 years when I've been forced to work from home. You know, just a lot of things I can't do. So it is an issue. It's a shrinking one, but it's something we can't lose sight of.
But I just want to be clear on the recommendation.
Yeah, I mean, I saw that in there and I was like, yeah, this needs to stay in there. But I think the recommendation was worded in such a way like, work with private interests. They're not gonna work. If there's no profit in it for them, they're not gonna come down. I am being, so, back in, I think it was 2008, 2009 during the recession, there was a large federal grant program called the Recovery Grants. And we had a state senator down here, Ed Riley, who got a grant to get broadband run with the schools. And so they set up a network down here to run broadband through the schools. And if you were along that network and a resident along those lines, you could get tapped into that broadband network. The county has its own they work with the broadband company that's now called the SAC. It used to be called Broad Stripe, if anybody's familiar.
Yes.
Some of you may actually be getting it.
So I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Trying to get to the recommendation.
Fiber,
Okay, thank you.
Oh, okay.
fiber.
Yeah, it's fine, but that's fiber, and
Think about
so,
the fiber, like coaxial can only do like so much.
Yeah.
Fiber can do like 10 times.
yeah, exactly.
So why waste
Why waste time
fiber
doing
if you can go to
coaxial?
fiber?
We need just
Thank
do
you.
fiber. Fortunately and unfortunately, at the start of the pandemic, the county decided to build a 300 foot, you could make a cell tower right across the street from it. The fortunate part of that is in order to do that, they needed fiber. And so there's a fiber drop right across the street from it. And that was probably the main reason why we were so, I don't want to say easily because it's taken a couple of years, but why my street was able to get fiber and get patched into the county network. And then the county, once the fiber set up, the county turns it over to the stand, we don't service, et cetera. But it's a long process for those who don't have it, because what you have now are your cases where private industry will, under those circumstances, unless you pay a king ransom, come in and wire you up.
Thank you.
Did some of you not have internet access at your?
We did, we had to go through that process too, a couple of years back, but it's fine. I just wanted to be clear on what the recommendation was. I wasn't sure, but it's fiber. That's all I was asking.
I think at this point in time, that's the future and.
Yeah.
the wire back.
Yeah, fiber is typically buried. Cable is typically run along the lines. That's the lowest of the telephone pole lines. Is all the
Yeah.
trees break it, all that fiber doesn't break it usually. No.
And fiber doesn't require the tower.
No, it's buried.
And it can flood, and it doesn't affect it.
One other, socioeconomic thing I touched on, we mentioned before, is on the show, the household income is on the left, but we also have to color the higher income level. You can see that, in general, around Davisville, kind of our most affluent, areas, household income about 50,000. But then we've got that, our pocket poverty around the double home communities around ways.
Oh, I'm sorry, we're looking at the left. I was like. I thought it was the right. I was like, man, it pays to be a farmer.
So lighter color, more diverse population. So again, the color and geography of poverty. Where we get the transfer area, it is not these areas. And Eric, do you want to kind of pivot, talk a little bit more in detail about ways you could kind of bounce some ideas around and.
So we have this thing during the break, just thought we should, I think, talk about, when we, a few minutes ago, maybe about an hour ago now. Here, we talked about ways we mission, there are needs for safety, just simplest things, such as life, right? But what are some, we talked about some of the commercial aspects down here, and just generally the population down here, in this area. And the reason that this area is also important for conversation with the SAC is that this is the only village center region. And this slide is from a previous presentation, I think the first meeting. So this is a topic area that we wanted to bring up to you for a group to discuss. Because each region plan touches and discusses each village center. So this is something that we really do want to hear what you guys think should be here in the future. When you hear Wasted Corner in 20 years, what do you think of? We know what's there today, and we know there are people who are there who need assistance, who live near, they need assistance, that need basic, things that we don't have, that we may take for granted, such as just access to healthy food and stuff of that nature. But we wanted to open up and have a broad conversation. You guys have a broad conversation, and we'll listen about what your vision for this area is the next couple of decades.
I have a question, out of curiosity. When you're thinking of this from the staff and zoning perspective, do you anticipate a sustainable process or picture that, and if so, how is it sustained? Because in other words, if you're trying to create sort of a sense of place that we kind of talked about at one of our other meetings, is that something where you're providing services and that is a publicly supported thing, or is it a sense of place that brings people in with the economic ability to have dinner? Somebody had mentioned like a farm to table type of restaurant. And then therefore there's money and enterprise that comes that helps support the infrastructure that's needed for the existing residents. How does that look to you and what does that mean? I'm curious. I've never been involved in a process like that before.
So before I get into that a little bit, I do want to mention with the caveat that there are a lot of village centers throughout the county that will likely have their own village center. They will go through their own process. They will have a lot of their own community development, community input, but what is going to be developed and redeveloped in these areas. And I'm thinking, up in Region 4, up Mountain Road, or the Riviera Beach, you guys travel up far north, or even potentially over in Deal, potentially, if those ideas were to come to their own map. It really be a plan focus, specific in this area, start to finish, nothing else, the scope in this area. So if this area were ever to warrant something like that, if you guys think this area does warrant something like that, you can absolutely make that a recommendation by first and foremost. But the second, kind of answer your question, it's really when you look at how we've written village centers and other region plans, it is pretty broad. It gives a general overview of the area from just kind of a descriptive point of view. And what we have done in there is we've incorporated ideas that the SAC for that region has mentioned about the area. So in this case, for Race and Corner, we would go with your leads. So how this group starts talking about it, we would add whatever you say into the description. With the also public input we get, we're out doing outreach from the public, stuff of that nature as well.
Yeah, so I think in one of our previous meetings, there was a lot of conversation and ideas that were brought up about that particular area, kind of in an ideal world type of situation. So I guess if that's kind of what you're talking about, it was more of a brainstorming thing versus we gotta figure out how this is gonna work.
Oh, yeah, at this point, it's kind of vision brainstorming, yeah.
I just have a question. I just have a question, like what are, like, if these are privately, like if, these shopping centers, like what jurisdiction does the county have in planning? Like, I guess like development of like housing there, or like if there's already existing structures, like, I guess that's where we're making a recommendation to like change something in the future, or I don't know.
Some of the things we talked about before, I don't know what their answer is, but I know we talked about like community gardens. If there were an opportunity with the concept of preserving the heritage of the area, it was something to the effect of, there's a tobacco barn warehouse there, where the farmers would bring the tobacco for sale and go for auction. And so is there a possibility of bringing something that's today's agriculture to that area? And is that something, in my mind, I'm thinking, is it sustainable? You know what I mean? So
I remember like restaurant discussion like that. I guess I'm just thinking like, what say do we have over like the bingo hall?
Yeah. The private properties, we're not gonna say, bingo hall has to shut down and we're gonna build a farm table restaurant there. But what we can do is include recommendations and say that, hey, the county could look at, cooperating with property owners to see if they can, revitalize vacant storefronts to include uses like. Like this is a short level agriculture. There's also, and we put some recommendations in Region 9, like, this idea of kind of revitalizing old commercial areas, is sort of practiced nationwide. And there's been some really good best practice that involved. There's a program called Main Street that's been used nationally, and there's a program of the state that implemented. They've got a handful of core tenants. One of them is beginning to just organize the local businesses to say, okay, can we all coordinate to see if we want to go in the same direction? Are we happy with it being warehouses? And maybe some people are, and some people think, well, I'd like something different there. And to coordinate efforts to then be able to pull together and see things to draw people in, like events and simple things like streetscape improvements, like hey, lighting, doing something, picking up the litter on the streets, if nothing else, then at least like doing some plantings to make the streetscape more attractive, be a more appealing area for people to walk through and be in. Kind of those foundational things to make the space look nicer. And then looking at potential like for financial incentives. Julia mentioned that the county does have a program for the Arundel Economic Development Corporation that provides loans to small businesses to do building renovation, but they only do that within kind of designated areas. So we could recommend that, hey, county and AADC should look at having some kind of designation to allow that kind of loan here to support some of these buildings that are underutilized, having additional resources. We're not telling them what they need to do with it, not telling them how to do anything with it, but saying, here is a resource to help you if you want to renovate this space.
Okay, that makes sense.
So, yeah.
Sure.
So I didn't look at any of this before I came down here tonight, but when you look across this county from, the southern tip all the way to the northern tip, when the general development plan was adopted in 2021, there was language in it about various village centers throughout the county. And obviously, a village center in, let's say, Laurel or the Maryland City area is gonna look a lot different than something up in Riviera Beach or something down here. The county council just adopted a mixed-use bill. So one of the things that came out of the Region 2 discussion and the Region 4 discussion was that there was no zoning district that was suitable for smaller scale mixed use. And so what the county council did, because our mixed use zoning districts have been based on uses and not scale, is they've converted all the mixed use districts now to be more scale oriented. So something that you might have up in North County might be able to go up to 15 stories, where we also now finally have a village district called the neighborhood district, where height is limited to only 3 stories. And you're only allowed 7 dwelling units per acre in those areas. Now, we don't have anywhere in the county that has this new MXD neighborhood, actually, because the bill is not, it's not valid yet. It hasn't taken effect. It'll take effect on February 2nd. But one question I would have is, do we think we have the right zoning in this area? Well, I guess the first question is, should it be a village center? And do we have the right kind of zoning to encourage what our vision for this area is? And could that mixed-use neighborhood district be a better designation? And I'm not saying it is, I'm just saying it's an option in our toolbox that we didn't have a couple weeks ago. And it's worth discussing, because this would be one of the areas where I would see that it could be potentially suitable.
So is this like a form-based code then rather than usage code?
Well, yes, because for instance, the neighborhood district, it is limited to 3 stories. It's limited to only 7 dwelling units per acre. Basically, it envisions like either service-oriented retail and office uses with a mix of residential. Okay, so the county never had anything like that. Like when we created our mixed-use districts, it was like pretty much parole.
Yeah.
And that's not suitable for everywhere. And there are some areas in the county where you may want much smaller scale mixed use. We didn't have a district that supported that, and now we do. So they did listen to the comments coming out of the other regions, which was great, and they have given us another.
So the neighborhood mixed use, when you say 7 dwelling units per acre, what does that mean exactly?
Well, like R1 is 1 dwelling unit per acre. An acre is about, acre is 42,560 square feet. So we're saying in 43,500 square feet, you could end up with 7 dwelling units at a max.
And the dwelling unit is for a single family?
Well, in order to do 7 dwelling units per acre, it's probably not going to be single family detached. And because of what's envisioned for the neighborhood zone, it may be apartments above retail.
Right, so it's not 7 families, it's something else.
7 apartments,
residents.
7 residences, 7 apartments, 7 whatever.
Townhouses, which, you know, are side by side.
Okay,
It's 7 households.
7 units,
So,
but it's not going to be, so, you
It's
know,
not
the
7
plan-
apartments.
right.
No, not apartment, it's 7 apartments. Yeah, or 7 townhouses, or 7, whatever you want to call it.
So just to give you an example, the R10 zoning district, which, you know, Michael talked about zoning, I don't think we have any R10 down here. That is typically townhouses. About the max you can do for townhouses is 10 dwelling units per acre, so it would be less than that. Now, in many cases with zoning, so the code says it's a maximum of 7 dwelling units per acre. The developer might not be able to get that. It might be 5 at the end of the day, depending on the mix of uses they propose. But it's basically giving you some guardrails, because in my mind, you know, I can see what a 3-story building is gonna look like. Maybe it's retail on the bottom, and then 2 levels of apartments.
Yep.
I don't know if that's appropriate for Wason's Corner or if we'd ever go in that direction, but I just want you all to understand that it's now out there as an option.
How many acres are in Wason's Corner?
That, yeah, that's, you know, think about like that bingo hall site. Like a couple acres.
Yeah.
So one thing I want to say. I think next month's conversation regarding transportation is going to be impactful and it can be a lot of questions, specifically around village center. The village centers when you think of village center, it's more multimodal, it's walkable, all the buzzwords, right? So I think maybe if you want to, as a group, we can hold off on this conversation, talk to transportation, and then maybe even the housing conversation the month after, and then revisit this as we begin getting into the zoning policy.
Yeah, my initial instinct for Wason's Corner, being here my whole life, is that if we're really focused on the heritage and the preservation and the lack of development, then we really want to think, if there are 10 viable acres there, that's 7 units per acre. I'm just saying that's 70 dwellings.
Yeah, I think we need to be
saying, we
real.
don't, and
Yeah.
now all of a sudden we're talking
I
about
think-
redevelopment in Wason's Corner. So I just think we have to be very, very conscientious of what we're talking about and really understand the lay of that land. And I think
Yeah.
that maybe there's a third or a fourth or fifth designation that we can recommend for something like that, where it's some sort of a heritage neighborhood mixed use of some sort. Because we talked about like farming and agricultural museum and different things like that. When you're talking about potentially adding multiple dwelling units that we've all been talking about, we're trying to avoid. I'm not saying none, but we also know that they're talking about putting in a brand new sewage system
Yeah.
that is gonna be paid for by someone else, and then so is there really truly plans of further development that's not really being clear yet?
I mean,
don't know.
all the conversations we've had have not centered around Wason's needing more dwelling units. It's really been about what services do they need? Do they need more parks? Do they need, Melinda was talking about some sort of grocery store or something. I think that's kind of what we're angling at with Wason's. It's like, what's missing, and what would make this. Yeah.
And it's only a place that if everybody has to drive to it, then you're dealing with big parking lots.
Yeah,
where it
right,
would be
right.
like-
But I think,
How many dwelling units are already there?
What is this jurisdiction, like, what is the village center, what does that allow per unit, per acre?
It's just a policy designation. It's the only zoning as of required.
Oh, so that's not a zoning, so what's the current zoning?
Most of it is commercial zone.
Okay, and does that allow?
Well, one thing too, I think in other conversations we've had with other members of the public and other regions, the term village center, I think a lot of people automatically think of the Pearl Town. Where is Washington, D.C., where is Montgomery County? That's not true. There are plenty of village centers. There are, I think, 2 or 3 village centers in Region 901. You would not think about that necessarily just by knowing what you know about Region 9. So our village centers I don't personally like the term village center because I think it gives the wrong impression, but I do think there's something to it to understand that not all village centers are created equal, but they are in a way because they're all different, right? And they don't all provide the same 15-story high, massive, target, Ruth's Chris buildings right next to it. Some of them are more intimate, some of them are community level. From what we hear a lot, and what I've heard in every region I've been working so far, is that the neighborhood scale is one of the most important things to each. And I think Wason's Corner is something that the group can think about if when we have this conversation to potentially evaluate the change. And really think about if change were to occur, keep in mind the scale of what would be. That would be my piece of advice.
Yeah, my first vision when you said that is thinking, oh, bungalow, little cottage, just, not town.
yeah, I think it's already the most densely populated little enclave in most of South County. And I don't think it's a question of, and I'm trying to echo what Melinda's been saying because she's really been an advocate for Wason's. I think it's really more like, okay, we've got this population concentration. What can we do to better serve this population concentration? And I think I'd like to see the conversation kind of go around that. I mean, we talk about transportation. Okay, maybe we make that area more walkable. Or, you know, and maybe we open a park up somewhere or something like that. I don't think we're talking about really changing zoning. I think we're talking about working within the existing constraints.
Yeah, but you may need to change zoning, right? And if
You
you wanna,
may
if
need
you
to.
want a grocery store,
Well,
you're gonna have other things that come with
but
it.
again, there's already commercial zoning there. And it could probably, I have no doubt it would accommodate a small grocery store. Do we want a giant there? Hell no. You know, and I don't, you know, you're talking about something that would just serve the residents of that area and keeping it on that scale.
It's because we've always looked at Portage, to echo, what I've heard is, yeah, the idea is to have some more parking amenities, more walkability, more public services. It's got brought up in the small area plan, for South County 20 years ago too. Hey, it's hard to have any kind of public services down here. It's nice that they need help and that open there, that's a big addition to this area, but do we need some kind of center that could be a library / community center, you know, like folks from the Department of Health needs to come down to the DO library now and just kind of social worker to be there 1 day a week to help get people to sign up for programs and help people out. Maybe they need something like that. And maybe there's a public space there and need multi-purpose. So those kind of very targeted interventions. You're guys saying, not a massive overhaul, not saying, hey, let's build it way up, but just kind of make some targeted interventions that kind of enliven the place.
Yeah, and you gotta be very careful given how it's strategically situated off that pole. Because the minute you open that up, you know, the developer sees a profit and, you know,
But so I
relax
would say
the
that
zoning.
I do agree that the conversation has kind of swayed from a few weeks back as far as where we are now. But I'll also say, there was an email that came out recently from for Section 8, and one of the sampling sizes was, the question was, keeping South County rural, and 91% of those who responded said they wanted to keep it rural.
Yeah.
And so the conversation has swung from growth to not, or not so much. However, I would also just say that we should be reminded that we're thinking years out. And so we want to be mindful of caring for those who need access and providing that. So it will take some form of growth to get there.
Yeah, for sure. I think we're all pretty much saying the same thing. When you come back with more information, would you be willing to bring back the number of dwelling units that currently exist within that general vicinity?
Have the people that live there been surveyed at all for what they would like the area to look like?
We've done some outreach in about 100 communities and we've been discussing whether they can pull together, talk really about this stuff. We pull together some of the business owners down there. And have a conversation.
I think that'd be interesting, yeah.
What percentage does Wason's Corner make up of the section 8, region 8? Region 8,
In terms of what, like land,
yeah.
land.
Because I mean, we're arguing, I don't want to use the word arguing, but we're saying, we need to keep it rural, But we're talking about changing 0.5% of sector region 8, so
Yeah,
are we
so-
really destroying the ruralness of region 8? You know what I'm saying, like, we're,
Scale,
like, when we think about like,
So look
like,
at Cal.
even if we build that up,
Drive
region
down.
8 is still very rural.
Drive down around Fort Calvert County.
I'm just saying that.
No,
Yeah. That we need to be mindful that it
Yeah.
does take.
Right, that's what I'm saying, and I think even if you were to, what I'm saying is, even if you were to build up Wason's Corner, let's just say we go in there and we build the whole thing up. It's, we're talking about this much of region 8.
That's the creep that we're trying.
Yeah.
But yeah, all you need to do is drive down Route 4 into Calvert County. Calvert has the town center concept. And you look at your Gunport, you look at your Prince Fredericks, 30 years ago, they looked like Wason. Now, you don't even want to be there. You know,
Yeah, but that's.
well,
Yeah, it's not a town,
but
we're not
the
building, we're not
point
saying
is-
town.
the point is, once you open it up, and you raised this earlier about, you know, the process for zoning appeals, it's like, well, you built this next to my property, and then somebody says, well, you got density there, why shouldn't I have density? And then just start, you know, expanding.
So
In terms of that question, so specifically, this village center that we're discussing, that's just this red hatched area. And so like, you have to think about how our policies layer together in a way.
Mhm.
So, in this regard, we're talking about the village center, and so like when we review things like, our office, or like long range planning specifically, reviews the comprehensive zoning applications that come in, one of the things that we think about is you might be right next door to the village center, but if you're not in the village center, you are not a targeted growth area per se. So that's one of the things that you can think about. I know we're worried about going off the rails and going too big. We want to focus on intentional growth. And so that's one of those things where you can say, okay, maybe this might be an area for limited, intentional, thought out, like potentially something. And we want to make sure that it maintains in this specific area. So that's just one of those guardrails that's kind of there to consider, that you don't have to be, I know we're worried about it spreading elsewhere, but that's one of those things we have there for you.
I think growth doesn't have to be bigger. It can also mean revitalization.
Yeah.
And Waston's a huge funny of it.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, there are a lot of vacant properties, a lot of things.
I definitely think too, like modernizing it and thinking, you know, nobody here lives in Wason. So we're thinking about what we would like, but also thinking about what people there may be interested in seeing or
Right.
having the
Yeah.
opportunity to walk to or work at right in their community is something.
Yeah, that's why having a forum with them. I think
They may be saying, I want that to growth here.
Yeah.
It brings
know.
money, it brings
Well,
everything, you know?
I doubt that, you never know.
But I'm just
Yeah.
saying, like, we are all sitting here going,
Yeah.
we don't want anything to grow, but they might be like, hey, we need growth here because we're dying.
Maybe they want a CVS or something
Right.
right there that offers them the opportunity to, you know,
Right.
I don't
Maybe they
know.
don't want a rundown liquor store anymore.
Yeah.
Better than this.
So I think that's great. I think scale, scope, and character, what we're talking about, and I think the group is actually very aligned. And I think that, that's absolutely the residents and business owners and property owners need to obviously have a say. So I think it's really good conversation. Appreciate it.
I would suggest that the people that on their own want to look, Daniel Perella to the architect who has a concept called missing middle house. And it talks a lot about this kind of walkable community with small scale housing. And just to look at his website and see some of the developments they've done.
We can send that.
What? We can send that out. Yeah, it's, because although there are some townhouse developments, they really shy away. I worked with them and they really, don't want to do townhouse development. It's just an interesting way of mixing different uses.
How are we doing on time tonight?
I think we're getting ready to wrap up. Okay, so we can kind of cover that from, there's kind of a recap slide. I guess they're gonna go to the, taking notes out of the slideshow, and edit that first one. So kind of something that we discussed, that we had written out as enough recommendations for consideration 2 and 3 paper. So we should strike the private sector.
Yeah.
Phrase, but about, just kind of
I would
increase
say,
access
yeah, just increase access.
to high speed.
Yeah.
Where the gas are.
Yeah, and that's a difficult one.
So we're going to, you know, the first thing to evaluate current.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And once you build
and
it,
increase.
and leave it more broad.
Yeah,
And then, as we just took upon our note that we hadn't been wasted before was, you know, renovating and developing vacant spaces. And then later in space, about some of the public realm improvements to make it more attractive and, looking at. Opportunities on public services, you know, what it is. And we put a note in here too, for consideration, we didn't get into about today, but kind of the tourism piece, and this is something like any conference we talk about, because people think that tourism is critical for the economy of the area, people who get sick of tourism. But this is kind of language that we crafted with the Region 9 group about, you know, collaborating with the existing groups out there, like Crossroads Heritage Area and Visit Anne Arundel Annapolis. To develop an implement a regional approach to tourism that focuses on the natural and cultural and historic places.
so I think there are some opportunities there, and living really close to Region 9, I can tell you there's a lot of tourism going down to the shore on the weekends. Can we capture some of that? We've got a little town center in Friendship that, you know, has a couple stores, and they probably exist on people from Northern Virginia and other NBC, et cetera, coming in and just stopping. And I know there are some, farmers markets off of like 258 that probably get a lot of business from, people going to the beaches. So, obviously they're not gonna be, okay, I mean, we can maybe set up some B&Bs, but most of the people that come in on the weekends want to go down to the shore. That's not Region 8, but are there things we can do to get some money into Region 8 from those people that are going down to the shore?
All your recommendations so far?
And then, related to that, there's something called wayfinding signage that we might want to talk about at some point. Where it's just signage that drivers, get a sign for, oh, we're downtown or historic or.
Well, yeah, there are some like,
Yeah.
I know the state has put up like some, I don't know if the state or the county has put up like some historic route designations on some of the little roads down here. But yeah, I mean, anything that maybe directs somebody to, a tourist attraction or something.
I know I'm driving around and I don't want to eat at a chain place. I would follow those.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
For the hope of finding something.
Yeah.
Pre-COVID. At least in Florida. I work in Florida, I forget, there was this big, how high of a percentage it was that was one way trying to take the stuff. Right, that's the money business.
Yeah.
Always been different in Maryland and Florida. Sure.
They can be, very great, yeah. Like even direct people to your.
State program, I think, you don't want to do it with time. Yeah, so that would be great.
Then we can do it in a vital routine.
Yeah.
Great idea.
I guess maybe.
Yeah, those thoughts we want to share, but we wrap up.
Can I ask a question, a little bit unrelated, but in mid-December was the deadline for people to submit, yeah, where are we on them?
Yeah, I've been working on those. We received a little bit less than 35 applications for zoning changes. And so
Countywide or in Region 8?
within Region 8.
Oh, okay.
And so the process is that staff will review them. We have a little bit of time to review them because we have to do things like look into, does this building have an existing non-conforming use or a special exception or like things like that that we have to consider. And we discuss it with our zoning administration section who are like the experts on zoning. And so then staff comes up with a kind of preliminary recommendation based upon, our knowledge and also things that we might have heard from the community. And then we bring them to you guys and you guys get first dibs to discuss them and give your input. And so then staff considers your input before we make a public map where we'll put out both staff's recommendation and your recommendation side by side. So folks can see what both groups recommend. So we get that public input. And then, we just continue on with the process with our master plan too, with it's with the planning advisory board then, and then we go to county council. And so
Does
When is that?
anybody besides staff see like the raw applications?
we put out like as much of the raw application that we can for folks to look at. Obviously, we redact some things like someone's signature.
Sure, sure.
But we do put out like if they provided us with a justification for why they're requesting, you guys will get that.
Or attached with it, submit an attachment with your application. You also.
When do we do that?
In the spring.
Can you just find spring?
We're still working on time. We've had some complications come up last month.
Is that like February or March meeting? April meeting?
And this is specific, like we'll know the actual location.
Yes.
Yeah.
You'll have a lot of detail. You'll have the property, basic property information, location, size. We'll give you information on things like if it's in a critical area for that.
So I'm very curious in this now. So like, if I put in like a zoning thing, how long does it take before I get an answer back?
It is,
The planning advisory board will be fall, they're gonna.
So it's a year-long process.
Yes.
If I want something, I'm not getting it back for like a year.
Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Believe it or not, this is the quickest way to get his own.
Yeah.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Wow.
When you go to the administrative hearing officer, you apply, you pay, normally you have to hire an attorney. I mean, this process, property owners go through by themselves. Now, some of them have attorneys that are representing.
Yeah.
But, this is when we take a look at the entire region as a whole. That's why it's called comprehensive.
Okay. No, I was just wondering what the timeline is for like a citizen to do that. So it's about a year to get any change through this process.
People who will miss this application opportunity and they're gonna find out that they can maybe apply at planning advisory board. So there'll be a couple more applications that we can anticipate coming in then.
Okay.
And then they can also apply to the county council. We will submit in bill format our recommended zoning map, the staff, OPZ's recommended zoning map. The property owners can still apply to the county council for a change.
Directly.
Yeah.
And do those usually get put in without going through a process?
No,
Yeah.
sometimes they do get approved and OPZ doesn't agree. So, but again, we don't have the authority to approve.
Yeah,
County council has the authority.
yeah.
Also,
Is
one
there-
of the- if I can just go real quick, one of the things I think you're asking is like the public process. And so if you apply at county council and it is like kind of taken up by a council member, they're gonna support you and introduce it to the rest of the council, you have to have a sign in your yard.
And
Yeah.
county council meetings are public meetings that allow public testimony, so they reflect public testimony through their several meetings process.
That's what I was saying. Is there not?
Yeah, it seems like, why do those people get to go to the abbreviated program?
Yeah.
Like they usually special friends of the county council?
And they buys their property in November of this year. Did they be cut out of the process? Personally, I.
No, yeah.
Way. These guys are getting in, the ones that just applied for the deadline in December, they're getting in at the very beginning, and they are going to have a lot of scrutiny. And look, we can send a recommendation to county council on a piece of property, the council can still change, you know,
Yeah.
things can change. Now, personally, do I see things going greatly here? No, I do not. But just because of the long-standing policies we've had about keeping South County rural. But, it does get kind of exciting in county council. I mean, we are- These guys were the agent building, which literally was the most.
If I can just give you guys one other thing, so I know I said, like, I've been the one working on these posters so far, so I did say we had 35, I want you to consider how big your region is, that's a lot of land, it's got all 35 in one place. And also, like Christina mentioned, this is a process that is free, and folks don't necessarily need a representative or an attorney to help them through this process. So some folks just have a wish and a dream and they submit it. That doesn't mean that staff's going to recommend their request or that y'all will recommend their request. Anybody can apply, but that doesn't mean that anybody will be recommended for or receive a zoning change.
Is this also like a yearly thing? So then next
No.
year there will be another deadline in December for like the next year?
So the county has only gone through comprehensive zoning about 5 times. The zoning only came into effect in 1952. So, like in Region 8, it's probably gonna be another 8-9 years before we're gonna have comprehensive rezoning. And that's why a property owner can go to the administrative officer to try and meet changes in the state outside of that 10-year process. It is a long time.
Yeah.
I have a question about that. I have a family member who submitted an application, so that day I should just not come, or?
You can come and you just recuse yourself from.
From one.
That,
And what we said that you can actually participate in discussion,
okay,
but when it comes time, say, the group will say, hey, how do I feel about this? You should just.
on an individual level, we'll go through them individually. Okay,
Well, there will be. We're gonna provide more information when we get closer to this, but there will be, because there are 30+ applications.
right,
The best way we've learned to discuss this as a group is give this to you ahead of time.
Yeah,
You guys will use a Survey Monkey type format and review it on your own, essentially. Provide your input on that Survey Monkey, be a staff, review the results, and then show you the results of each one, and you guys can decide which ones you want to talk about. Like, for example, if there's an application we all agree on, you may not want to talk about, use time and meeting to talk about it, rather than one where there's 50-50 or whatever. But we'll provide more information, but yes, the recusing stuff, that's a common, I think that's happened in every region we've been a part of so
Okay.
far, so that.
You're just say, I need to recuse myself, I can't vote on this.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay, but
I wasn't sure
I
if you
should
could
stay home that day.
know if we know the person or, or if it's our neighbor.
Yeah, no, if it's your neighbor, it's okay. Yeah, you're gonna,
Yeah.
down here you are.
I'm sorry, you know what?
Well, you all know a lot of people in Region Eight, right? It's a tight-knit community, so you're not gonna recuse yourself because you know somebody.
Also, another point for like recusing yourself, if you can provide explanation on it, that's totally fine. You can engage in discussion on the property. You can like be like, oh, I know this person, I know their goals, their dreams, etc. You just have to recuse yourself from the vote. So just because you're recusing yourself from the vote, you can still engage in conversation.
We'll try to get on that next story. Sure, we'll understand, you mentioned we're not through.
Anybody apply for down zone? That was sort of funny and so not. One thing I would say, one thing we have to look at it as a committee is kind of being consistent with this. And just, you know, looking at the circumstances and trying to, you know, judge them evenly.
Give some boundaries and some expectations
Yeah.
and so forth. So seeing that we have about 5 minutes left, I noticed we have one person from the public here.
Across the Route 9. Wanted to get a chance to hear about ag. And it's good that I heard critical mass. That's the only way agriculture can survive, is if there's a critical mass of it. But unfortunately, Anne Arundel County's not big enough to keep critical mass. What's left down here in the county. And what I was thinking about was the only way we're gonna do it is if Anne Arundel County teams with the other Southern Maryland county. Calvert's finally got their head screwed back on, and they've downzoned, but now the developers have just moved south into St. Mary's. If I have to get my baler repaired, I have to go to Cecil County now. If I have fertilizer, I have to go to Charlotte Hall. So what I'm saying here is, I think the southern counties are trying to work together. You have a tri-county council, which is Charles, Calvert, and St. Mary's. But we've got to do a better job in Arundel working with the other counties. We're going to save agriculture in Southern Maryland. It's flat out simple. And that's my comment right now. I just, you know, when you have to drive to Charlotte Hall to get something, destroy your day. So,
Is that because of some law, or that's just economy? That's the only place you can go buy it right now? Okay, okay. I thought it was like people were preventing you from doing that. Oh, no, it's just, that's the only place that sells it.
the only place to go.
Okay.
We used to have, Southern States and Marlboro, they're gone. You know, if you need anything that's already brought, go all the way to Brandon one. You gotta have infrastructure.
Yeah.
To support the farming community, and we don't have it. You look at our equipment dealers, we have them out on 301, but they're for the suburban people. If you have farm equipment, needs repair, you're going to Frederick, Eastern Shore, Cecil County. So again, I hope that makes it into the report. We need to do a better job of working together. And you may be, and I'm just valuing up.
So you mentioned the tri-county, is Anne Arundel County not?
No, that's strictly Calvert.
Tri-County Council was set up with the tobacco buyout.
Yeah.
And they took part of the money from, the tobacco sellers and gave it to those counties to try to get a different crop. But that worked. That all being said.
Do you think, it would be worth maybe solar?
Oh, Croom, everything south of, yeah. I mean, that's held together too, fairly decent. But, yeah, she's one of the original.
They also did a very good job of preserving land along the top street.
Yeah.
Yeah. Surprisingly, when you look at the rest of the shore.
Yeah.
But when you look at that area along the top street, you're like, wow, how did they actually accomplish?
Yeah, I hear that's changing, but yeah. you can look at it. I'm just worried about Creek West, but, you know,
The way, right across the line,
yeah,
it's always been a fight for them.
yeah.
John Ball, Ball. One last thing, I'll sit down, but I just, when you went to Wade Corner, you know, a little bit of industrial is not bad. And Waston's has always been industrial. There used to be a packing plant there for tobacco, there's a fertilizer plant there. And industrial keeps your jobs, and jobs keep people here, and they're not on Route 4 and Route 2. So, just point.
A quick point for you, I don't know if you work with Hopkins or not, but they have fertilizers, a variety of.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
We agree on Bayard, okay.
yeah.
And then, SMATIC. The SMATIC is actually operated through Tri-County Council, and SMATIC is the 5 southern counties. Doesn't mean Anne Arundel can't be more active. But they do kind of, I was on that board for a while, that is Calvert, Charles, St. Mary's, Anne Arundel, and PG. And that was formed after the tobacco buyout with the restitution money. So how much do they do in southern Anne Arundel? It depends on a lot of different things. But yeah.
People don't realize the critical mass. You don't have that mass.
It's tough, yeah, it's tough. I think you might have missed the 25-acre median of the farm apparently in southern Region 8 or in Anne Arundel County as a whole. So it's definitely a challenge.
Yeah.
I appreciate that you're coming.
Tobacco farms historically were small.
True, they were. You're absolutely right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. So, anything else?
Yeah, one final slide, really quick, kind of next steps. Our next meeting will be transportation, February 6th, Thursday, same time, 5:30, 8:30. We are trying to get location in Davidsonville. We are working really hard to find a place. Thank you for those who have helped provide, locations. We've reached out. I think we're getting closer, but I don't want to jinx anything. But once we do have a location, we'll send you guys the agenda, location, as well as post it online for everybody else to see if they want to attend the meeting as well. And hopefully by the end of the month, we're gonna send out the public and you all a first draft of environment and park strategies. So you guys, this is part of the homework that I've highlighted here with big bold letters. We're gonna send it to you in a survey monkey format. For you to review and you can provide as much comment as you want on each strategy, saying, yes, you guys heard it exactly what we said, it's perfect, or you're missing a little bit, or you got completely off the ball, here's what we actually said. So please do that. And then also, before the next meeting, we're gonna send another survey monkey for you. It's going to be about the vision statement. SAC has created 3 different drafts of a vision statement for you to review, provide your input on. The survey we're gonna send out to you is 3 questions, one of which is your name. There's only 2 questions. One is, what's your favorite? And then the final question is, do you have any comments on what you selected? So if there isn't a favorite that you like, you put none of the above, that's fine, but then let us know why. Or if there's, say you pick number 2, 2 is your favorite, but you think it's missing something, let us know. 2 is my favorite, but I think it's missing X, Y, and Z. So just really, let us know your input, your thoughts, because this vision statement and these strategies are what you make, right? Because if we can't hear, if we don't know what you guys are thinking, we're going with what we think we heard from you. So it's important for you guys to tell us what's on paper. Other than that, so that'll be coming out in the next couple of weeks. So just be on the lookout for the email. We'll try to get to you at least 2 weeks in advance, just to make sure we have time to do so. Other than that, that's all I have.
Okay, thank you very much. And do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
And second? Second, okay, all in favor? Thank you so much.
Yeah,